The story kicks off as Hikaru spots a powerful beam of light shooting out from a building. Alarms blare inside, and the guards are freaking out after realizing something seriously important has been stolen. The thief is named Aki, and she makes an acrobatic escape, but the guards catch up to her on the roof. But Aki's no ordinary thief. She's a Mecha Yude host. So she whips out her weapon and starts taking them down, but they're packing anti-Mecha Yude gear. Despite her best efforts, she's captured and another host steps in, ready to reclaim the stolen cube. Aki's Mecha Yude isn't staying quiet. It speaks up, insulted by how poorly its kind is treated. The blue-haired guy couldn't care less, seeing Mecha Yude as nothing more than tools for humans. He retrieves the cube and taunts Aki, but she's not done yet. With some tricks up her sleeve, she breaks free and an epic battle ensues. The guy demands she be captured, but Aki is too quick and agile. In the chaos, she knocks the cube loose, breaking its container. Then a massive surge of power erupts from it, the same light Hikaru saw earlier. As the energy flares, Hikaru feels something strange, like a voice calling out for help. The next day, Hikaru heads to school, still shaken by what he saw. On the train, he suddenly has a panic attack and tries to rush back home, but his friends show up, unknowingly stopping him. Nearby, Eki is getting scolded for all the chaos she caused. She's told the cube is still somewhere nearby, and she promises not to mess up again. Later, we see Hikaru telling his friends about the strange voice he heard and the bright light from the night before. He explains that after getting a closer look, the building exploded. He even recorded it on his phone, but for some reason, the video shows nothing. Hikaru also mentions seeing something bright fall nearby, but that's not in the footage either. His friends don't believe a word of it, dismissing his story as some weird dream. They mock him for believing in ghosts. But then, out of nowhere, Hikaru hears the voice again, and he's left in shock. Hikaru charges toward the mysterious voice, only to be stopped by some badass cop who warns him he's nearing a restricted area. The cop tells him to go home, but then just leaves him there like it's no big deal. Ignoring the warning, Hikaru hears the voice again, crying out for help. Something inside him snaps, and he dashes into the restricted zone, desperately searching for the source. His frantic search leads him to a glowing cube, the voice coming from within it, asking for help again. Hikaru is now shocked but curious, so he ends up touching the cube anyway. The cube suddenly shoots straight up into the sky, and now Hikaru is in a state of extreme panic when he sees it come back down. But before it touches him, it unleashes a massive burst of power. The light is blinding, so intense that even Aki, wherever she is, notices it. Hikaru, however, has bigger problems. A giant arm suddenly sprouts out of his back, and the arm is celebrating its freedom. Even weirder, Hikaru can't feel the arm at all. Then, while he's still trying to figure out where the voice is coming from, the arm casually reveals itself. It thanks Hikaru for saving it and asks for his name, but Hikaru, understandably losing his mind, has no idea what's going on, but the arm tries to be polite and introduces itself first, only to realize it's forgotten its own name. Hikaru, in full panic mode, tries to shake it off, but the arm is stuck to his hoodie like some clingy pet. Then, before Hikaru can even process this madness, a drone shows up and declares that its target has been found. Hikaru, thinking it's just some delivery drone, ignores it in his attempt to ditch the arm. But surprisingly, this is not an Amazon package, it's a weapon of mass destruction. And now Hikaru has to run for his life. As he runs, Hikaru yells at the arm to leave him the hell alone and go hang out with its drone buddy. But the arm insists that Hikaru is his only friend now. In the chaos, Hikaru trips, and the arm accidentally yanks his pants off. Pantsless and panicking, Hikaru still manages to use the arm to fend off the drone and stop it from slicing him in half. The arm points out with perfect timing that now is really not the time for laughing. Then, to make matters worse, several more Terminator-style drones appear. So the arm, trying to keep Hikaru calm, tells him not to worry because they just need to work together to escape. Elsewhere, a group gets word that the trigger arm has been located. One guy's pumped to have it back, but the rest of them are losing their minds, furious that it's made contact with some random human. They're not sure of who the kid is, but they figure he's just some civilian. The president of the group leaves the whole mess to the angry white rooster of a guy, who immediately orders a perimeter around the area, and his top priority is to capture the trigger arm, and he doesn't give a damn what happens to the kid. Meanwhile, Hikaru manages to hide for a moment, and the arm compliments him on being a pretty fast runner. Hikaru, still freaked out, demands to know what the arm even is, but it has no clue, not even its own name. The only thing it's sure of is that Hikaru is a stand-up guy. The arm goes on to explain that without something called arbitrium, it can't move freely. So Hikaru is confused, wondering what this arbitrium thing is, but the arm's all over the place and just asks for Hikaru's name. Hikaru, still not interested in chit-chat, walks off, pointing out that the arm seems to work just fine for escaping on its own. The arm concernedly warns that they might still be in danger, worried about Hikaru's safety. But Hikaru's not having it. He blames the arm for all the trouble and says he'd be safer if he got far away from it. The further Hikaru gets, though, the more the arm starts to weaken, practically begging him not to leave it behind. Hikaru hesitates and rushes back to help, but the arm recovers just as quickly, so Hikaru tries to leave again. This back and forth goes on a few times, and it becomes painfully obvious that Hikaru has to stick close or the arm will lose its energy completely. Realizing he's got no other choice, Hikaru reluctantly throws his hoodie back on with the arm still attached. Just then, the drones show up again, but this time, Hikaru snaps and demands that the arm do something useful. The arm doesn't hesitate, it grabs Hikaru and drags him off. Meanwhile, the blue-haired guy up top figures the drones are enough to handle this civilian, as he has to focus on Aki, who's lurking nearby. Aki is down below, but surprisingly she's so terrible with directions, so the voice in her ear is trying to guide her, telling her to go the other way, but instead of taking the long way around, Aki's arms contemplate smashing through the building, but she decides to squeeze through an opening instead. Meanwhile, Hikaru is still running for his life, but Aki eventually tracks him down, and she unleashes her arms to take the drones down with ease. Aki calls Hikaru's arm Alma and threatens it, warning that if it moves, she'll end it right there. Aki's arms remind her she's supposed to read some script to put her targets at ease, but they're rudely interrupted by the blue-haired guy, who's itching for revenge after last night's events. He ends up bickering with Aki's arms of all things. Alma then points out a way for Hikaru to escape, and since Aki can't chase them with her arms out, Hikaru takes the chance. The drones of course keep coming after him, and Aki's anger skyrockets. Hikaru is already regretting the hell out of ever stepping foot in this restricted area, and the terror is written all over his face. Alma, seeing the mess he's dragged Hikaru into, tells him to just leave him behind. Everyone's gunning for them, and Alma doesn't want Hikaru caught up in it any longer. Hikaru hesitates because if he leaves, Alma will lose all his strength, and this moment shows just how kind-hearted Hikaru really is. Alma's resolve strengthens, and he reminds that he never wants to see good people get hurt, so he tells Hikaru to forget everything and run as fast as he can. Just then, Aki obliterates the blue-haired guy, and she's had it with Alma's constant running. Alma cornered surrenders and agrees to do whatever Aki says as long as she lets Hikaru go. But Hikaru's no longer the same scared kid, so he's done with being a coward, and also would leave a sour taste in his mouth if he ran away now. Aki, clearly fed up, decides she'll have to destroy both of them, but Alma does something unexpected. He tells Hikaru to step forward, but Hikaru hesitates confused, so Alma insists this is the only way out. Hikaru takes a deep breath, trusts the arm he just met, and charges forward. And in that moment, Alma undergoes a wild transformation, giving Hikaru the power to land a punch on Aki so hard that all she can do is reach out helplessly as they make their escape. They crawl out of a sewer not long after, and Hikaru finally introduces himself properly this time. Back at the building, some kid collapses in fury, demanding to know who stole his mecha Yude. He's seething, declaring that the trigger arm is his. Meanwhile, Aki's boss is disappointed to hear she let the arm slip away, but he gets it because no one could have predicted a civilian would manage to control Alma. Time's ticking though, and their enemies will be hot on their trail, so he orders Aki back out to retrieve the arm. Later on, Hikaru heads to school, trying to act normal while hiding the fact that he's got a giant talking arm attached to him. He then thinks he's in the clear, until he walks into class, and his heart sinks when he spots Aki, now the newest student in school. Ignoring everyone, the furious Aki drags her seat right next to Hikaru's seat, and introduces herself with a cold, angry glare, and that shit leaves our poor boy completely speechless. Then, as Hikaru tries to shrug off Aki's intense death glare, he has no idea that someone else is also keeping an eye on him. Two agents, Warner and Toos, are watching him from a nearby building. They work for the Kagami group and have been assigned to recover the trigger arm by any means necessary, including murder, although Toos isn't thrilled about the idea of killing a kid. Later after class, Hikaru sneaks into the bathroom, hoping to escape Aki. He never imagined she'd actually follow him to school, but today it doesn't seem like she's looking for a fight. Hikaru figures she's trying to avoid making a scene on school grounds. Regardless, Alma thinks this is their chance to talk things out. Yesterday's chaos left them no choice but to fight Aki, but thinking back, she did seem somewhat friendly at first, though Hikaru remembers it a bit differently, and his missing favorite pants a proof of that shit day. Still, there aren't many people he can talk to about Alma. His options are limited: go with Aki or head to the police. Hikaru asks Alma what he thinks, but Alma is too busy having fun messing with the toilet paper to really care. However, Aki, who had been eavesdropping from the next stall, cuts in. She tells Hikaru that going to the police is a terrible idea. They'd hand him straight over to Kagami. She then climbs over the stall and tells Hikaru she's here to be his bodyguard. But Hikaru, flustered by how close she is in the boys' restroom, panics and bolts out the door, with Aki chasing after him. Later, after losing Aki, Hikaru is having lunch with his friends. But given how Aki has been relentlessly chasing him lately, His friends are starting to think he might be in a relationship with her or something. Hikaru denies it, but his weak protests aren't exactly convincing, especially when Aki shows up on the roof, looking for him yet again. Hikaru's friends call Aki over, pointing out that he's right there, but in that very moment, Hikaru seems to have disappeared. Somehow he managed to slip away and hide in the blink of an eye. Alma, confused by Hikaru's behavior, wonders why he's dodging Aki when they'd already agreed to try talking to her. But just then, one of Hikaru's classmates shows up on the roof, clearly having searched for Aki all over. She introduces herself as Meru, all smiles, and says it's nice to finally meet Aki. But Aki's reaction is not exactly warm and fuzzy. Meru, being as cheerful as ever, mistakes Aki's cold expression for nerves. After all, she's the new kid. So by trying to make things less awkward, she offers Aki a tray of cookies as a welcome gift. Hikaru braces himself, half expecting Aki to blow up, but to his shock, Aki seems completely mesmerized by the cookies, and without a second thought, she grabs a fistful and shoves them into her mouth. Meru, a little taken aback by how fast Aki inhaled the cookies, is happy her gift was appreciated. She then asks if they can be friends, and Aki, still chewing, casually says she doesn't mind. Watching this unfold, Hikaru is stunned because Aki seems way more normal than he had initially, though, but that doesn't mean he's about to strike up a conversation with her. So he slips on his noise-canceling headphones and decides to nap his way through the rest of the day, hoping to avoid her. Meanwhile, as Aki continues devouring the cookies, Meru starts asking about her relationship with Hikaru. That's when Aki suddenly remembers she was supposed to be looking for him this whole time. Wanting to be helpful, Meru comes up with a plan to get Aki alone with Hikaru. Later that day, while Hikaru is trying to make a quiet exit from school, Meru appears out of nowhere and hands him a handwritten letter from Aki. Hikaru already knows where this is headed, and as he predicted, Aki wants to meet him. Meru, fully convinced she's playing matchmaker, drags Hikaru to an abandoned part of the school, refusing to let him leave because she's certain Aki is about to confess her love. Frustrated and out of options, Hikaru steps into the classroom where Aki is waiting and immediately starts yelling at her for getting Meru involved in this whole mess. Aki, completely unbothered, denies everything, explaining that this was all Meru's idea. Still, Hikaru points out that she's been following him around all day and demands to know what her deal is. Finally, Aki cuts to the chase, revealing that she's part of an organization called ARMS, and her mission is to watch over Alma as his bodyguard. Alma thinks this is fantastic news. After all, Aki protecting them sounds like a win. But Aki quickly clarifies, saying her job is to protect Alma, not Hikaru. She isn't too concerned with what happens to Hikaru, but since Alma is linked to him, there's not much she can do to separate them. As part of her mission, she's supposed to bring both of them back to headquarters. She assures Hikaru that nothing will happen to him as long as he cooperates, and while Alma sees this as great news, Hikaru remains skeptical, because he's still not sure if Aki can be trusted. Alma understands Hikaru's hesitation, but insists that Aki knows something important about him, something they need to find out. Alma is still curious about who he is, and Hikaru feels bad for him, so Hikaru reluctantly agrees to go with Aki, even though he doesn't fully trust her. But before committing, though, Hikaru demands to know why Alma loses power whenever he moves too far away from him. After witnessing this firsthand, Aki's mind short-circuits for a moment. In her experience, a mecha youth fusing to something as simple as a jacket shouldn't be possible, and there's no intel on anything like this. She then steps closer to Hikaru, telling him she needs to take him in for testing, but her sudden aggression freaks him out. So Hikaru panickedly asks Alma if there's any way they can get out of this. Alma tries to use the same power they'd unleashed on Aki the day before. There's a massive flash of light, but nothing happens because Alma's still too weak, so that leaves Hikaru with only one option. He grabs Alma and bolts. Running as fast as he can, Hikaru heads for the front door. But just as he's about to escape, Meru steps in his way, blocking the exit, and she tells him he should finish talking to Aki before she lets him leave. Meanwhile, outside the building, Tus and Wanner are keeping a close watch on the entrance. But since there's a schoolgirl standing outside, they can't make a move without blowing their cover. Inside, Hikaru frantically searches for another way out, but all the other exits have been boarded up, so with no options left, it looks like his only choice is to head up. Meanwhile, Aki is desperately trying to track him down. Dex, her right arm, chimes in, saying she should head down the right hall, while Sinus, her left arm, argues she should go left. But surprisingly, Aki ignores both of them and goes rogue, literally. She smashes through the floor, crashing directly on top of Hikaru. Now there's no escape for Hikaru, but Aki can't wrap her head around why Hikaru's running when he literally spared her life just yesterday. Hikaru then tries to explain by saying that he could never kill anyone, but Aki's not hearing it anymore. She's convinced he's up to something shady, using Alma as part of his scheme. Alma tries to defend him, claiming Hikaru's not the bad guy here. But Aki's too far gone in her suspicions, so Alma tries to use his powers to protect Hikaru, But when Alma's powers fail to activate again, Aki takes it as undeniable proof. Hikaru isn't bonded with Alma, so her mind's made up that Hikaru's gotta go. She's ready to end it all to protect Alma. But of course, this is when Meru bursts in, drawn by all the noise. And wouldn't you know it, she catches a glimpse of the scene and immediately jumps to the wrong conclusion. Thinking she's interrupting a private moment, so she awkwardly turns around and leaves without a word. And as soon as she's gone, Aki moves in to finish the job. But Hikaru's already vanished, forcing her to start the hunt all over again. Once Aki's out of sight, Hikaru quietly gets to his feet and tries to slip out through the front door. But he's stopped by Wanner, who's now wearing one of those Kagami group uniforms, instantly putting Hikaru on high alert. Wanner casually says he needs Hikaru's help, but seriously, after the Kagami group nearly killed him with drones, Hikaru's in no mood to offer any favors. Wanner then offers a half-hearted apology, claiming the drones were a mistake, but he's really only sorry they didn't finish the job. And without warning, he blasts Hikaru with the sonic cannon. It doesn't physically harm him, but Hikaru drops to his knees, overwhelmed by dizziness. Wanner then kicks the door open to give Tus a clear shot, but like an idiot, he's blocking her view. But by the time he steps aside, Alma has already dragged Hikaru out of range. Even though Hikaru is still reeling, the danger's far from over, so he scrambles back inside, desperate to escape the nightmare. Tus is pissed at Wanner for screwing up her shot, so she decides to stop wasting time and starts blasting through the walls, hoping to nail Hikaru. Hikaru is freaking out, sure that she's going to kill him, but Alma has something else on his mind. Even though Wanner is using a mecha Yud, Alma can't sense any consciousness from it, which is seriously weird. Right then, Wanner hits Hikaru with another sonic wave, and Hikaru crashes at the end of the hallway, but just as Tus takes her shot, Aki swoops in, saving his life at the last second. Not backing down, Wanner fires off another sonic wave, so Aki tries to block it, but just like Hikaru, she gets dizzy and drops to the ground. Wanner is loving every minute of this because he lives for making people suffer. But Aki not going down that easy, so she pushes herself back up, determined to protect Alma, and she begs Hikaru to run while he still can. Hikaru hesitates, not wanting to leave Aki to fight alone, but she begs him to go because they can't let the Kagami group get their hands on Alma. Hikaru finally listens, dashing away while Aki keeps Wanner busy. But of course, Wanner's not done. He pulls out a new weapon, and Aki has no idea how to handle it. Meanwhile, as Hikaru races up the stairs, he grows increasingly frustrated with everyone coming after him. Then Alma stops him and says they shouldn't leave Aki behind after all. But Hikaru reminds him that Aki told him to run to protect Alma, but Alma's not feeling it. He doesn't want to abandon her, so he leaps off Hikaru's back and punches a hole through the wall for Hikaru to escape. But when Alma tries to go back to help Aki himself, he quickly loses power because he can't move too far from Hikaru. Realizing Alma can't do anything without him, Hikaru agrees to return and help, but they need a solid plan before facing Wanner and his deadly sonic cannon. Meanwhile, Wanner manages to defeat Aki by using shackles that suppress the consciousness of Mecha Yud, rendering her helpless. He then drags her to the rooftop where Tus is supposed to snipe her. But to Wanner's surprise, Tus shows up in person, frustrated with how long he's taking to finish the job. She then takes one look at Aki and mocks her for being so pathetic, barely able to contain her disdain. Sure, Tus would love to kill her, but she has orders to bring Aki back alive. She then tells Wanner to get back inside and find Hikaru, but that won't take long because Hikaru's already coming up the staircase right toward them. Then as soon as Hikaru spots Wanner, he throws a punch, but let's be real, he's no fighter and Wanner easily dodges it. Hikaru may not have fists of fury, but at least he knows Wanner's attacks won't work on him. Wanner decides to blast him anyway, but Hikaru's got noise-canceling earpieces in, making him immune to the sonic wave. His goal was just to buy enough time for Aki to get back in the game, but when he glances at her, he realizes she's been captured, and that throws a wrench in his plan, so by thinking fast, Hikaru comes up with a new one. He then throws Alma at Aki, hoping to get those shackles off her Mecha Yud. But of course, Alma starts losing power the second he's too far from Hikaru. So now Hikaru has to sprint closer, and somehow Tus, who's supposed to be a sniper, completely misses her shot. Alma and Hikaru manage to free Aki, and the moment she's back on her feet, she grabs Tus, using her as a human shield to charge straight at Wanner. Wanner hesitates because he doesn't want to blast Tus, but she orders him to fire for the sake of the mission. He follows through, but all he manages to do is knock Tus out cold, so Aki wastes no time and delivers a knockout blow to Wanner as well. The building is on the verge of collapse after all the damage their fight caused, and just before it crumbles, Tus regains consciousness and flies away, leaving Wanner to get buried in the rubble along with the others. Then we see that Aki and Hikaru make it out in one piece, but before they can catch their breath, Aki's boss from ARMS shows up, and he is not happy with the mess she made to complete the mission. They then haul Hikaru back to their headquarters, and when Hikaru finally wakes up, he's introduced to the leader of the ARMS group, Alges, and his Mecha Yud Fist. Aegis explains that they're in a war against the Kagami group, whose goal is to enslave all Mecha Yude and control them. Alma doesn't remember much about them, but Fist reveals he's actually Alma's brother, and they need his help to win this war. Alma immediately agrees to help and convinces Hikaru to join as well, but Aki and Aegis cut in, telling Hikaru that they only need Alma for this fight, so technically he doesn't have to stick around at all. While he was asleep, they ran tests on him to measure the levels of arbitrium in his body. Arbitrium is the energy produced by the human mind, and it's what fuels all Mecha Yude. But when Hikaru's levels were plotted on a graph, well, this is what his levels look like. And this is what a normal Mecha Yude user's levels look like. In case it wasn't already clear, Hikaru is a total failure when it comes to wielding Mecha Yude, and there's no sugarcoating it. Aegis then admits that Hikaru might have been the one to awaken Alma, but he's also the reason Alma is now fused to a jacket, and on top of that, he can't even use Alma's power. Despite this disaster, they have no choice but to leave Alma in Hikaru's care for now. However, Aegis makes it painfully clear Hikaru is not allowed to act on his own under any circumstances because he simply cannot handle himself. Alma then tries to defend Hikaru, pointing out that the only reason Kagami didn't capture him is thanks to Hikaru. But Quen cuts in, saying that even if that's true, the fact remains. Hikaru doesn't have the power to wield Alma properly, making him a liability. Just as things get tense, Aki interrupts, saying she believes Hikaru might have the potential to draw out Alma's power after all. He did harness it the first time they met, so with some training, she's sure he can improve. And what has this training been so far? Alma doing push-ups on the school roof? Sure, Hikaru's grateful Aki offered to train him, but he's seriously questioning how effective this is when Alma is doing all the work and he's just sitting there. But Aki tells him that training Arbitrium is all about spirit, so he just needs to psych himself up to make himself stronger. That's all well and good, but it still doesn't explain how exercise is supposed to boost his Arbitrium. Nonetheless, Hikaru decides to just roll with it for now. A few moments later, Eki gets a call from Arms, telling her she has to return to headquarters immediately, so she cuts Hikaru and Alma's so-called training short and drags them back with her. Apparently, there's been a string of incidents where Mecha Yude have been ripped away from their wielders, and surprisingly, this guy is the third victim this week. Aegis is convinced this has Kagami's dirty fingerprints all over it, likely the work of a new agent. So his top priority now is to recover the stolen Mecha Yude as fast as humanly possible before things go from bad to worse. Alma, clueless as ever, asks what too late even means, so Dex breaks it down for him. If someone's Mecha Yude gets forcibly ripped from their body, they're dead in a few days, no question. They're not entirely sure why, but the best guess is that Arbitrium starts leaking out from the fusion point, draining the poor soul's strength until they just wither away. A lot about Arbitrium is still a mystery, but one thing's clear. It messes with the human body in ways they barely understand. For example, anyone who fuses with a Mecha Yude gets a ridiculous boost in physical ability. Not that it helps Hikaru, since Alma didn't fully fuse with him, he's still just a regular guy, no superpowers for him. Aki spots some marks on the victim's arms and instantly knows the culprit used a worm-type mecha. Aegis is already reading her mind, so before she can say anything, he shuts it down. Her job is to protect Alma, period, with no side missions and no personal vendettas. The second Aegis is out the door, Eki naturally ignores everything he just said and announces she has something she needs to investigate for personal reasons. And since she's stuck babysitting Hikaru, he's tagging along whether he likes it or not. Meanwhile, over at the Kagami group, they're panicking because Jun Kagami's younger brother has stolen an experimental artificial Mecha Yude and vanished into thin air. No one knows what his plan is, but it's definitely not good. The 3rd Division offers to handle it, but considering they're the same clowns who let Alma escape last time, the White Ravens are given the job instead. Elsewhere, Hikaru is out with Eki late into the night, and by now he's figured out she's snooping around investigating that case, even though Aegis told her not to. Still, he wonders if it's really a good idea for them to be out here alone. Aki flat out ignores him, but just then, they hear car horns blaring nearby. On the other side of the containers, they spot the White Ravens, busy searching for Kagami's younger brother. Their leader Imada orders his men to keep scouring the area. But of course, that's when Aki and Hikaru show up. Hikaru, as usual, thinks it's a terrible idea to get involved with anyone from the Kagami group, but Aki unfazedly assures him everything will be fine as long as he sticks close and keeps Alma hidden. She steps up to Imada and casually asks if he knows anything about a worm-type Mecha Yude wielder. At first, they think she's just some random girl, but the second she mentions Mecha Yude, their move flips. Imada and his squad go hostile. There's no way they can let the general public find out about the mechas. They charge in to capture her, and Aki's left with no choice but to fight back. She calls out Sinus and Dex for backup. Imada's taken aback when he realizes she's a mecha wielder, but orders are orders. He tells the White Ravens to regroup and attack again. Meanwhile, Hikaru gets knocked aside in the chaos, and as he's struggling to get back on his feet, he spots a young boy with an inhaler hiding in a corner. Hikaru tells the kid it's dangerous to be here and asks if he's okay, but the boy doesn't respond and instead he bolts. Hikaru has no idea who this kid is, but something doesn't sit right with him, so he takes off after the boy, leaving Aki to handle the White Raven solo. Imada, noticing this, has his Mecha Joe transform into a bike, and he speeds off to chase the kid too. At the same time, a few White Raven members catch up to the kid and Hikaru, so Hikaru steps in front of the kid, ready to protect him. The White Raven guys look more than happy to beat the crap out of Hikaru if it means getting to the kid, but right before Hikaru gets smacked, Alma pops out and blocks the hit. Just then, they spot Imada and his Mecha Yude bikes zooming straight toward them. Hikaru turns around to tell the kid to run, but the kid's already vanished. Imada's original target may have slipped away, but now that he spotted Alma, he switches gears and goes after him instead. Alma quickly realizes they're in trouble, so he tries to drag Hikaru to safety. But let's be real, there's no way Alma can outrun a motorcycle. So Imada easily catches up and grabs Alma, smug as ever for capturing the trigger arm. Just when it looks like Imada's won, Aki comes out of nowhere, knocks him clean off his bike, and pins him down. She demands answers about a worm-type Mecha Yude wielder, and Imada and Joe, not wanting to get squashed by a shipping container, reluctantly agree to cooperate. But it turns out they genuinely don't know anything about a worm-type wielder, so Aki frustratedly drops the container and lets them go. She's not happy about the dead end, but she's even more pissed at Hikaru for running off like an idiot. Hikaru tries to explain he saw a kid being chased and just wanted to help, but Aki's having none of it. She tears into him, furious that his reckless behavior almost got Alma captured. As much as she wants to believe in him, he's still powerless, and she tells him point blank that he can't do anything on his own. Meanwhile, the kid from earlier is watching everything unfold from the rooftops, clearly interested in Alma too. He's just waiting for the right moment to make his move. Back on the ground, Hikaru is just as furious with Aki. After all, she's the one who dragged him into this mess in the first place, without bothering to explain a damn thing. So why should he trust her or blindly follow her orders? And he's had enough? And if anyone's to blame for this disaster, it's her. So he tells her he's done, and he's just going to go home. Stinus and Dex then ask Aki if it's really okay to let Hikaru just walk off on his own, but she's too mad to care. She snaps that she doesn't give a damn what happens to him. As Hikaru storms away, Alma tries to talk sense into him, suggesting he go back and apologize to Aki. After all, she's the one protecting them. But Hikaru flat out refuses. Then we see that Jun is lurking nearby and thinks this is perfect. If Hikaru's beefing with his bodyguard, it'll be way easier to snatch Alma. But before he can make his move, Aki cuts him off, and despite being furious with Hikaru, she's still got a duty to keep them safe no matter what. Jun was hoping to avoid her, but since he's out of options, he brings out his mecha. Aki's blood boils when she realizes it's a worm type. So she thinks Jun is the very guy she's been hunting down, but after their first clash, Dex quickly realizes he's not the one they're after. Still, that moment of hesitation is all Jun needs to surround Aki, and things are about to go south fast. Meanwhile, Hikaru is stewing over his argument with Aki when his phone rings. Alma urges him to apologize while he's got the chance, but when Hikaru checks the screen, he sees a picture of Aki knocked out cold. Jun's voice follows, telling Hikaru that he stripped Aki of her Mecha Yude, and without them, she'll be dead in a few hours. So if Hikaru wants to save her, he's got to meet Jun at a specific location. So the first thing the panicking Hikaru does is call Algis to report what happened. Algis is obviously worried about Aki, but he warns Hikaru not to go after Jun because that's exactly what Jun wants. He says he'll send some agents to track them down, but in the meantime he orders Hikaru and Alma to stay put and not do anything reckless. Hikaru is beyond fed up with being told he's too weak to handle anything, and he's starting to believe it might be true. Alma, however, assures him he's capable of amazing things when he sets his mind to it, but Hikaru isn't buying it, and he argues that every brave act he's done so far has only been because of Alma's influence, so without Alma he'd still be a coward. He then admits for the first time that he's truly powerless on his own, but right now he's not alone. So he asks Alma to lend him his strength for what he's about to do. Hikaru and Alma then head over to the abandoned warehouse Jun marked on the map, and as they walk in, Jun greets them with a smug smile. Alma, not wasting time, asks why Jun's doing all of this, so Jun, in typical fashion, explains that he's after the strongest Mecha Yude. Sure, Sinus and Dex are decent, but compared to what he wants, they're nothing but junk. What he really wants is the trigger arm, the legendary piece that's said to grant its wielder the strongest body, and Jun's determined to claim that power for himself. So without a second thought, Jun launches his attack, forcing Hikaru to dart around the room to avoid getting flattened. Then when he spots an opening, Hikaru closes in and tries to grab Sinus and Dex, but Jun's always one step ahead, blocking every move with ease. Jun laughs and mocks him, calling Hikaru nothing but a weakling. Hikaru doesn't argue because he knows he's weak, but that's not stopping him from doing what's right. With resolve burning in his eyes, he charges back in, managing to outmaneuver Jun just enough to break through his defenses. Frustrated beyond belief, Jun can't believe how hard Hikaru's making him work. To make things worse, his asthma starts acting up and he's had enough. Deciding to put an end to this, he traps Hikaru inside a massive energy cage, leaving him nowhere to run. Then with no hesitation, Jun electrocutes him until Hikaru crashes to the ground, completely drained. Seizing the moment, Jun grabs Hikaru and begins ripping Alma away, pulling them apart piece by piece. At last, Jun thinks it's over, he's finally got Alma, and now he can fix his broken body. But just as he begins to celebrate, Alma shockingly still moves and knocks him flat. Jun's completely baffled. Mecha Yud aren't supposed to move on their own. His confusion only deepens when Hikaru, who should be on the verge of death after having his mecha ripped out, starts moving too. Hikaru reaches out for Alma, and as soon as they touch, Alma's true power is unleashed, sending a clear message to Jun. He's in deep trouble. Jun tries forming a massive fist to knock them out, but it's pointless. Hikaru and Alma are on a different level now, and they crush his attack like it's nothing. Together, they launch a fist at Jun, and just when he thinks he's blocked it, Hikaru rushes in and finishes him off with one final brutal punch. Jun's completely down for the count at this point. Hikaru and Alma finally think they can breathe easy, but nope, they were dead wrong. The head of the White Ravens shows up, and both Hikaru and Alma brace themselves for another fight. But the man waves it off, saying he's not getting paid to brawl with them today. He's just here to take Jun and leave. He also grabs Sinus and Dex, intending to take them too, but Hikaru steps in, declaring he's not letting the guy walk off with them. The White Ravens leader looks like he's more than ready to throw down, but Jun, still licking his wounds, stops him, saying he wants to be the one to defeat Hikaru someday. He forbids the man from harming Hikaru for now. The man, with a shrug, tosses the Mecha Yud back to Hikaru, but not without a parting warning. They'll meet again, and next time, Hikaru won't be so lucky. A little while later, Aki wakes up in a hospital with Sinus and Dex reattached to her. After learning that Hikaru was the one who saved her, she heads up to the rooftop, where Hikaru is awkwardly trying to sew Alma back onto his jacket. She sits down next to him, and there's an uncomfortable silence. Eventually, Hikaru breaks the ice and asks her what she was really searching for the night before. Aki admits she was hunting for the person who killed her family. The only clue she has is that the killer wields a worm-type Mecha Yud. Turns out, Jun wasn't the one. She acted impulsively because of her need for revenge, and she's grateful Hikaru saved her from herself. Wanting to repay him, she offers to sew Alma back together for him. Problem is, Aki's terrible at sewing, and Hikaru quickly tries to stop her before she makes things worse. Just as they're struggling over the needle and thread, Meru walks in with some sweets, and seeing the two of them so close, Meru is instantly struck by what looks like a romance scene, her eyes widening in shock. She squeals, declaring the rom-com love has hit a new level, then runs off screaming that she loves it. Hikaru fumbles to explain, but before he can get a word out, Aki, completely unfazed, dives into the sweets like a maniac, happily munching away. Hikaru is now officially part of ARMS, and just a few days later, he's thrown into his first mission for the team. A couple of other ARMS members are on standby, while Hikaru clings to the top of a transport truck carrying captured Mecha Yud. When he peeks inside, he sees a nasty-looking fat guy beating up a scientist. The team had expected this, so they remind Hikaru to stick to the plan. Set off the EMP they gave him once the truck reaches the interchange up ahead. Hikaru plans to follow orders, but when Alma sees the fat man abusing his shackled Mecha Yud, he refuses to just stand by. So he does something reckless that causes the truck to flip over, creating a huge accident on the road. Hikaru gets out unharmed, but now he has to run for his life because Alma's outburst gave away their position, making Hikaru a target. Unfortunately, the fat man throws the entire truck in front of him, blocking his escape. Things are looking grim, so ARMS member Tiny and his Mecha Carex decide to lend a hand. The man then fires multiple missiles at Hikaru, who barely dodges them, but now 3 mechas are closing in. The fat guy then pulls out an armed cannon, aiming to turn Hikaru to ashes. But just as it seems like Hikaru is done for, Tani zooms in and snatches him to safety. Hikaru is grateful for the rescue, and Alma apologizes for causing such a mess with his impulsive actions. But they barely have time to talk before the fat man locates them again and charges in for another attack. This time, though, Aki intercepts him and knocks him to the ground. She's beyond annoyed that Hikaru and Alma bumbled such a simple task, so she orders Tiny to get them out before they make things worse for the mission. When the fat man gets back up, he notices Aki has 2 mechas, but he still thinks he's got the upper hand because he's packing 3. He tries to kick her, but she easily blocks it. Then he attempts to blast her, but the fool runs out of energy and passes out. Turns out, using a Mecha Yud takes serious stamina, and this guy clearly hasn't trained enough to handle more than one. Not surprising considering he's probably never set foot in a gym in his life. Aki then figures he won't be getting up anytime soon, so she calls in a recovery team to come pick him up. But while her back is turned, someone else sneaks in using a worm-type mecha to revive the guy. By the time Aki realizes something's wrong, the fat man's already back on his feet, stronger than before. Aki is struggling to handle the guy's strength, and her chances of winning look pretty slim. But just in the nick of time, Hikaru comes charging in and knocks the guy back. Aki yells that she told him to run, but of course, Hikaru couldn't just sit by and watch her struggle, so he jumped in to help. The man then gets back up and fires his laser cannon, but Hikaru and Alma see it coming a mile away, and together, they easily deflect the blast. Then the guy tries to crush them with the truck, but Hikaru, totally unfazed, charges forward and knocks him out with a single punch. When the fight's over, Tani comes up and congratulates Hikaru for doing such a solid job. Thanks to his efforts, they were able to rescue a ton of Mecha Yude, and Hikaru basks in the praise. But Aki seems more interested in the knocked out guy. Back at headquarters, Aki is in the shower, lost in flashbacks of her time with her sister and the promise she made to protect her. A promise she ultimately failed to keep, and now all she has left is the drive to avenge her family. Outside the shower, a nervous scientist Aki had asked for help is waiting for her. When she finally steps out, he starts freaking out because it's the first time he's seen her right out of the shower. He quickly explains that he's just here to report on the issue Aki asked him to look into, but unfortunately they didn't get any useful info from the guy they captured. They inspected the mecha Yu he was using, and none were worm types. But Aki's sure she saw a worm type, so something weird is definitely going on. The scientist, trying to be supportive, tells Aki he knows she's out for revenge and promises to help her investigate with everything he's got. He even tries to convince her to rely on him instead of Hikaru. But by the time he finishes his little speech, Aki's already gone to find Hikaru. Over at Hikaru's house, Alma wakes up and realizes they overslept, and if Hikaru doesn't get up soon, they're going to be late for school, so Alma panics and starts trying to drag Hikaru out of bed by his pants, even offering to help him change clothes if that's what it takes. But just as Alma's making a mess of things, Aki bursts into Hikaru's room through the window. Seeing that he's not ready for school, she also says she'll help him get dressed, whether he likes it or not, because her offer is non-negotiable. Meanwhile, at school, the whole class is buzzing because there's a rumor that a new transfer student is joining today, and apparently the guy's filthy rich, so naturally everyone wants to meet him. Right then, the door swings open, and there's Aki holding a half-naked Hikaru. Everyone immediately assumes there's something going on between the two, and Meru's mind starts running wild with all sorts of fantasies. Then once Aki sets Hikaru down, Meru casually informs the class that the new transfer student will be arriving soon. This is news to Aki as well, but just as she's processing it, a call blares over the PA system and some guy is yelling for Hikaru to come to the roof. So Hikaru and Aki head up there, only to find Jun waiting for them. The second Sinus and Dex lay eyes on him. They immediately attack, remembering what Jun did to Aki the last time they crossed paths. But Jun blocks the attack with his mecha, already annoyed by the interruption. He's about to take her down when he gets a message from Tudo, the head of the White Ravens. Tudo isn't having any of it and reminds Jun that the only reason he's allowed at school is because he promised not to use his mecha, but here he is already breaking that promise. Jun tries to argue that Aki started it, but Tudo shuts him down because there are no exceptions. Left with no choice, Jun withdraws his mecha and surrenders. Aki is more than ready to knock him out cold anyway. But Hikaru tells her to back off since it's clear Jun doesn't want to fight anymore, so Aki reluctantly lets him go for now. Jun, however, swears he'll claim the trigger arm for himself eventually, but that's a mission for another day because the real reason he came to this school is Hikaru. He then says that the scientist who created his mecha told him it would take time for it to fully adapt to his body, so until he can master it, he plans to keep a close eye on Hikaru. He wants to figure out the secret behind how Hikaru can use Alma so effortlessly. And once he learns that secret, Jun vows to crush Hikaru and steal the trigger arm. Hikaru then notices that Jun keeps calling Alma the trigger arm, so he asks if Jun knows any other useful info since Alma lost his memories. But before Jun can even answer, Aki goes for the attack again, convinced that Jun is way too dangerous to let live. She's dead serious about finishing him off, but Alma grabs her just in time, reminding her they need to get some information about Alma's past from June. But while they're busy fighting, Jun casually starts walking away. Before leaving, he shoots Hikaru a warning. His mecha restrictions only apply at school, so if he catches Hikaru slipping on the streets, he's not going to let him off so easy. Later that day, Aki and Hikaru are walking through the school halls together, and Aki's sticking way too close for comfort. Hikaru is starting to get seriously annoyed, so he tries to distract her by pretending there's an imaginary rice ball just to create some space. It works for a minute, but no matter where he goes, Aki's right there, practically glued to his side. Then Hikaru desperately manages to ditch her by using his actual lunch as bait, but now he's left hungry and wondering what to do. But just as he's contemplating his next move, he hears Jun's voice from above. Jun then recalls asking Tudu if he knows what makes Hikaru able to use the trigger arm without any training, and Tudu had no clue, but he then jokingly says that maybe it's something in the food Hikaru eats. So now, waving his black card like he owns the place, Jun says he's treating Hikaru to lunch so he can see what he's eating. Hikaru finds the offer weird, but since he wanted to talk to Jun anyway, he asks if Jun knows anything about Alma's past. But before Jun can answer, Aki kicks Hikaru's legs, and she holds him, refusing to let Jun get too close to Hikaru. But then she says that she has no issue accepting Jun's offer for a free lunch, and she's already picked out the dream meal she wants. A little while later, Hikaru finds himself hiding out in the bathroom, desperate for some alone time. He tells Alma he's at a loss because Aki won't let him get anywhere near Jun, and it's clear Jun knows something about Alma's past. But Aki doesn't seem to care, and if things keep going like this, Hikaru may never get the chance to ask Jun what he knows. Just then, an idea strikes Hikaru, and he might have a way to finally get close to Jun after all. Today is the big sports tournament, and Hikaru thinks that this might finally be his chance to talk to Jun, but when the moment arrives, Jun is nowhere to be seen. Just then, Hikaru gets smacked right in the face with a ball. Turns out, Jun has been watching from a tree the entire time, and he can't believe Hikaru's reaction time is so slow, even though he's got the strongest mecha. Suddenly, Jun senses something flying his way, so he dodges, and another ball bounces off the tree, ricocheting right onto Hikaru's head, knocking him out cold. The ball was thrown by Aki, but she had meant to hit Jun, so she apologizes to Hikaru for accidentally taking him out. While Hikaru is unconscious, Meru sees her chance to act out one of her wild fantasies. She ties Hikaru up in a ribbon and stages a showdown between Aki and Jun to see who gets to win Hikaru. Aki's down for it, still holding a grudge against Jun for what he did to her, and Jun, well, he's always game for a fight. But since Meru's pulling the strings, they agree to settle things with a plain old fistfight. Then we see that Meru is loving every second of the drama, while Alma pleads with Hikaru to find a way to stop Aki, reminding him they still need to talk to Jun. Thinking fast, Hikaru comes up with the only thing that might work, and it's food. He then stands up and yells that if Aki gives him a few minutes alone with Jun, he'll buy her dream meal. Aki gets tempted by the thought of free food, so she agrees and drags Meru off, giving Jun and Hikaru some privacy. Once they're alone, Jun asks what Hikaru wanted to talk about. Hikaru and Alma waste no time asking if Jun knows anything about Alma's past, since the Kagami group seems so intent on capturing him. Alma then explains that he lost all his memories, so any info Jun has would be super helpful. Jun, shocked that the mighty trigger arm has amnesia, tells them that the Kagami group has tons of records on Alma. After all, Alma originally belonged to them. Jun even pulls out a photo as proof. It shows Alma with Yakumo Kagami, the founder of the Kagami group and the one who built this city into what it is today. Hikaru and Alma are stunned, but Jun admits he doesn't know much beyond that, since the photo was taken decades ago. As Jun leaves, Aki watches from a bridge with Meru tied up next to her. Then Aki gets a call from the scientist she spoke to earlier, and he's found a lead on the worm-type Mecha-Yude user she's been hunting for. A little while later, Hikaru and Alma head to the city library to dig up some info on Yakumo Kagami. Alma can't wrap his head around why everyone here seems to love the Kagami group so much, considering the awful things they've been doing to Mecha-Yude. Hikaru agrees their recent actions have been pretty disgusting, but from the people's point of view, the Kagami group has done a lot to improve the city, so it makes sense they'd be adored. As they search, Hikaru and Alma stumble across a portrait of Yakumo Kagami, and that's when Alma loses it. He breaks down in tears because he knows this person was important to him, but he can't remember a thing about them. Meanwhile, across the city, Tani has just been captured by the worm-type mecha user, and Aki is the first to arrive at the scene. But before she can do anything, the mecha has already ripped Carex right out of Tani's body. It then hurls Tani at Aki like a ragdoll, and as for Carex, it crushes him until he shatters into pieces. Aki, Sinus, and Dex are enraged, and they all attack the worm user, but it dodges their strikes and gets far enough away to launch something into the gaping hole in Tani's chest, turning him into a puppet under its control, forcing him to fight Aki. As the worm user tries to make its escape, Aki faces a tough choice: check on Tani or chase down the worm user. She's desperate to capture the worm user, so she knocks Tani out and tears off the worm control device. Hikaru then gets a call about Tani's condition and rushes over, finding him unconscious in an alleyway. They get Tani back to headquarters, and thanks to Hikaru's quick actions, Tani should survive, but as for Carex, there's no saving him. Mecha Yud might be mechanical life forms, but they die just like humans do, and nothing can change that. Originally, they came from another dimension in search of Ordella, the father of all Mecha Yud. With the help of some humans, they managed to find it. But during an experiment to awaken it, something went horribly wrong, so Alma had to use all this power to seal Ordella away, and that's likely what caused his memory loss. The key to Ordella's location lies within Alma's lost memories, and depending on who gets their hands on it, the fate of the world could be at stake. Elsewhere, Aki finally catches up with the Red Girl, demanding to know if she was the one who killed her family and attempts to attack. But when the Red Girl turns around, Aki is stunned because she notices a toy in her hand, and it belongs to her little sister. We then flash back to just before Aki meets her sister. When Aki meets up with Quen, he tells her that the worm-type user she's hunting is still on the loose. He only discovered this because the incident reports showed someone other than Jun was stripping people of their mecha. This had been going on for months, so Aki became furious and grabs him by the collar, demanding why he didn't tell her sooner. Quen tries to defend himself by saying that he didn't know either until now, and the only reason he even found out was by hacking into the ARMS database to help Aki. She then lets him go, but the fact that this info has been in ARMS' database for months means one thing. Algis knew the whole time and decided not to tell her. Quen speculates that Algis was likely investigating these incidents himself, tracking them for 8 years now. Just then, an alarm blares, so that means that the worm-type user is active again. Aki doesn't hesitate and charges out, ready to confront her archenemy. The story then shifts back to the present, where Aki confronts the worm-type user, who turns out to be her supposedly dead sister Fubuki. Aki gets shocked and flashes back to their childhood, recalling when she and Fubuki would play games with Sinus and Dex, but even then, Aki never quite understood the point of this game. Then just as they were playing, her mother called Fubuki from the room because it was her turn for the experiments. Normally Aki would go, but her leg was injured, so Fubuki had to take her place. Fubuki left with a smile, but it was the last time Aki saw her because moments later the facility exploded in flames and neither Fubuki nor their parents were ever seen again, that is until now. We're back in the present with Aki, Sinus, and Dex stunned that Fubuki is alive, and also Fubuki is just as overjoyed to see Aki, yet her frail coughing shows she's in terrible shape. Fubuki's mecha then emerges, but before she can even fart, Sinus and Dex grab it and slam it into the wall. They have so many unanswered questions, but right now they have to escape because ARMS is on its way. And then we see that by the time the ARMS agents reach the garage, they find nothing but a crack in the wall and one of Aki's broken hair clips, so Algis knows she was there. Outside the garage, Aki still has the worm mecha held hostage, determined to get answers. She demands to know if it was responsible for killing her parents. The mecha tries to explain, saying it was all an accident, but Sinus and Dex won't let it finish because they're convinced that any word that will come out of that screwdriver will be just bullshit. Sinus was there with Fubuki on the day of the incident and clearly remembers the worm mecha attacking everyone, but the only thing he doesn't know is why it did. Fubuki then begs Aki to stop, insisting that their parents' deaths weren't Amaryllis' fault. Fubuki blames herself for what happened and apologizes over and over to Aki, while Amaryllis tries to comfort her. It's clear now there's more to this story than any of them realized, so Sinus and Dex demand Amaryllis tell them exactly what happened that day. On the day of the incident, everything was going as planned. Fubuki had been happily telling her mom about the game she played with Aki, and the experiment was meant to explore the possibility of arbitrium amplification. Amaryllis, along with the woman who was united with her at the time, entered to assist, but the instant Amaryllis locked eyes with Fubuki, an unknown phenomenon struck, causing both of their arbitrium to resonate wildly. Amaryllis tried to stop it by de-resonating with Fubuki, but it only made things worse. Back in the present, Fubuki admits she's wanted to talk to Aki about this for years, but she could never gather the courage, feeling that her parents' deaths were her fault. Amaryllis reassures her it wasn't her fault, but despite Amaryllis' insistence that it was an accident, Aki still blames her, so she ignores Fubuki's pleas and intends to destroy Amaryllis here and now. But under all the stress, Fubuki faints just as Amaryllis had feared might happen. Aki thinks they should get Fubuki to a hospital, but Amaryllis tells her it's useless because after the incident, Fubuki was left with a condition that prevents her from generating her own arbitrium, and no doctor or scientist has been able to help. They've managed her symptoms so far, but at this rate, Fubuki won't last much longer. And according to Amaryllis, there's only one way to save Fubuki, but it's going to be incredibly difficult. The next morning, as Hikaru's alarm blares, Alma wakes him, since this is the usual time Aki comes crashing through his window. But today the window remains untouched, and instead Aki rings the front doorbell. Hikaru and Alma exchange a look. Aki never uses the front door, so it's clear something's off, but she doesn't seem ready to talk about it, so Hikaru holds back from asking. Just then, Meru bursts in, eager to ask them something. With a big test coming up, she suggests they all have a group study session, including Jun, who's been lurking nearby spying on Hikaru all morning. Meru heads over and asks if he'd like to join, but Jun scoffs and claims that he didn't come to this school for something as pointless as studying. Meru just ignores this shit talk like it never comes out of his mouth and shouts back to Hikaru, asking if they can hold the study session at his house. Hikaru mulls it over and sure he'd like to hang out with Meru, but he knows Aki and Jun will probably clash, and the last thing he needs is a showdown in his house. He tries talking Meru out of it, but she won't budge, even asking Aki to back her up. Aki declines politely, but Meru keeps pushing, saying it's the perfect excuse to visit Hikaru's house. But Aki says that she has been going to his house every morning, so the idea doesn't excite her, and this just makes Meru start daydreaming again about how far their rom-com has progressed. Aki then walks off, and Hikaru follows, sensing something's bothering her, though she refuses to say what. Meanwhile, back at Arms, one of the scientists, frustrated with being out of the loop, heads over to Quentin's workstation, asking if he knows anything about Aki's whereabouts, as she hasn't been to headquarters lately. Quentin initially plays dumb, but after he gets to test some unique persuasion, he confesses he might have something to do with Aki's current situation. Meanwhile, Aki sits beside her ailing sister as Amaryllis explains how they'd managed to keep Fubuki alive so far. Since Fubuki can generate her own arbitrium, Amaryllis has been siphoning arbitrium from other mecha users to feed it to her. But Fubuki's illness is advancing too quickly now for Amaryllis to keep up, and with little time left before her condition turns critical, Amaryllis urges Aki to do whatever it takes to save her sister. And of course, the only way Aki can guarantee Fubuki's survival is by taking Hikaru's poor life. Then we see that at the same time across the city, all the mecha users that Amaryllis infected, both from Arms and the Kagami group, begin lashing out in violent fits without warning like zombies. Algis seems to have an idea of what might be behind it, so he orders all available Arms agents into the field to restrain the rogue mecha users, while Kagami gives the same directive to their group. Later that evening, Meru, Jun, and Hikaru are heading to his place to study, but as they're walking, Hikaru gets an urgent message from Algis, so he quickly cancels on them and runs off in the opposite direction. Soon after, he arrives at Arms headquarters, where Algis apologizes for calling him in on such short notice, but explains there's a crisis. Dozens of mecha users have suddenly spiraled out of control, and Algis suspects the worm-type mecha user is responsible. He even has footage of Aki making friendly contact with this worm user, which raises suspicions that Aki might somehow be involved. So if Algis is right, that would mean she's betrayed both humanity and the mecha kind. For now, he plans to capture her for questioning, but given her strength, they may have to use force to bring her down. Alma and Hikaru can hardly believe Algis suspects Aki because she's one of their own. But Algis points out that the organization can't run on feelings alone, and also the only reason Aki joined Arms was because her goals align with theirs, so if her goals have changed, there's nothing to keep her from betraying them. Hikaru refuses to believe Aki would ever turn against them, so he races off to find her before Arms does, hoping to figure out what's really going on. That's the plan at least, but on his way he runs into Quen, who reminds him that he has no clue where to start looking. But luckily Quen has thought it through and has come up with a foolproof plan to track Aki down, and it involves this idiot. Hikaru immediately recognizes this goofy as Warner, the guy who tried to kill him a few days ago. It's clear Warner doesn't want to be here, but he doesn't have much of a choice. And before they can even discuss their plan, Warner's mecha emerges and starts profusely apologizing for Warner's actions. Hikaru is confused because he thought Warner's mecha was supposed to be brainwashed. But after Warner's capture, Arms managed to remove the shackles and free Kagemaru. Quentin was reluctant to let Kagemaru relink with Warner, but with no other options, and since Kagemaru insisted, he allowed it. Kagemaru then declares he's going to teach Warner what it truly means to fight for justice, and that Warner's going to learn even if he has to beat it into his skull. Forcing Warner down onto his knees, Kagemaru makes him apologize, with Warner swearing at Hikaru and Alma that the two of them will be valuable on this mission. Out in town a while later, Kagemaru is scanning every inch for Aki, but Warner keeps whining about wanting to go home, which gets on Kagemaru's last nerves, so he snaps at him to work harder if he's serious about atoning for his past mistakes. Hikaru and Alma are starting to doubt if this is even the best way to find Aki, but Kagemaru reassures them, saying it's only a matter of time before they'll track her down soon, thanks to the acoustic sonar that's picking up the resonant frequency of her arbitrium. Just then, Hikaru is ambushed from behind, but Kagemaru shields him out of danger just in time. The attacker turns out to be Jun, who's clearly sick of Hikaru avoiding him. He declares he won't leave Hikaru alone until he figures out the secret behind Hikaru's powers. With Jun likely tagging along now, Alma asks if he's down to help them search for Aki. But since Jun has never been a fan of Aki, he scoffs, questioning why he won't help. So Alma, determined to get his help, promises to spill some of Hikaru's secrets at the study session if Jun agrees. Jun takes the bait, and word of this gets back to Tudo, who informs Jun's brother, asking if he should send someone to keep an eye on Jun, but Jun's brother doesn't give a damn about Jun's safety, insisting that the company's priorities come first, so he won't be sending anyone to babysit him. Meanwhile, Kajimaru has tracked Aki's arbitrium to a parking garage. The signal is strong, so he's convinced she must be close. But when they reach the source, they're faced with Aki herself, who looks dead set on following Amaryllis' advice if it means saving her sister. Elsewhere, Fubuki becomes suddenly energized, eagerly asking Amaryllis if her sister will be alright. Amaryllis assures her, telling her not to worry because Aki loves her. So Fubuki, with a smile, shakes her head and says that Aki better save her this time. Hikaru and Alma are both uneasy about Aki, wondering if she's tangled up in something involving the worm user, just as Al just hinted. When they press her about it, she shuts them down and says she needs Hikaru to come with her. Hikaru agrees because he trusts her, but he demands to know what's going on. Yet even though he's already agreed to help, Aki leaps into the air and attacks him out of nowhere. Completely blindsided, Hikaru is about to get knocked out when Jun intervenes, stepping in to defend him. Though Jun doesn't particularly like Hikaru, he's sworn to be the one to take him down, and there's no way he's letting Aki beat him to it. Aki tries to fight her way past Jun, but his sheer strength outclasses hers by a mile, so within moments he has her restrained. That's when Hikaru steps up, firmly telling Jun to let Aki go. Sure, she attacked him first, but Hikaru insists she must have a good reason. He pleads with her to calm down and talk to him, saying he doesn't know what she's going through, but he is willing to help if she'll just explain. Aki hesitates, unsure of what to say, but that's when Sinis and Dex chime in, revealing the truth. Aki's sister Fubuki is still alive but gravely ill due to a lack of arbitrium. She needs an enormous amount to survive, and Aki has been desperately searching for a way to save her. According to Amaryllis, Hikaru might have enough arbitrium in his body to cure Fubuki, given his ability to awaken Alma. But as soon as the name Amaryllis comes up, Jun starts laughing. He claims he knows exactly what's happening. The Kagami Group's extensive records on Amaryllis leave him confident that Amaryllis is controlling Fubuki, likely holding her hostage. Sinis and Dex don't buy it and angrily argue with him, but Hikaru silences everyone. Despite everything, he declares he's still willing to go with Aki, because after all, they're friends. Aki is stunned because this is the first time Hikaru has ever called her his friend. But before the moment lingers too long, Alma chimes in, reminding everyone there's still a special meal to hit after all this chaos, so the quicker they help Aki, the quicker they can all dig in. Jun grows visibly frustrated, feeling like no one listened when he made it clear that Amaryllis is trying to trick them. He refuses to let Hikaru go, but Hikaru shakes him off and tells him he has no right to interfere, and then he looks to Aki while extending his hand, ready to help her save Fubuki. However, as Aki looks at him and remembers how kind he's always been to her, she realizes she can't go through with her plan to sacrifice him. Instead, she steps back, telling Hikaru she doesn't need his help. There have to be other ways to save Fubuki, and she's not going to drag an outsider like him into her family problems. To push him further away, she coldly says they're not friends and he shouldn't act so familiar with her. With that, she turns and leaves to return to Fubuki, and Hikaru is left confused, but Jun just shakes his head, muttering that Aki is an idiot for not realizing Amaryllis is clearly evil. Meanwhile, the two scientists are hard at work digging through data and manage to uncover files on Amaryllis in the Kagami Group's database. Documents reveal that Amaryllis once went berserk, causing the deaths of everyone involved in the experiment, Fubuki included. They're certain Amaryllis is behind all of this, but can't figure out why she's suddenly become active after so much time. They don't have many leads, but they believe they might find answers by analyzing lit movement from the day Aki encountered the worm user. Back with Aki, she returns to Fubuki and Amaryllis. Seeing that Hikaru isn't with her, Amaryllis demands an explanation. Aki admits Hikaru won't be coming, leaving Amaryllis visibly shocked and upset. She questions why Aki is backing out of their arrangement, especially now. Aki tries to justify her decision, saying she doesn't want to involve outsiders and believes they can solve this as a family. But Fubuki's response is anything but understanding. She accuses Aki of caring more about Hikaru than her own sister, throwing guilt and venom her way, and says that if Aki truly loved her, she'd have no problem sacrificing Hikaru to save her. Fubuki even brings up the past, asking if Aki is going to abandon her again and let her die like before. You'd almost think someone called the fire department with all this gaslighting, but Aki, blinded by her love for her sister, doesn't notice anything is off. Instead, she offers herself as a replacement, volunteering to become Fubuki's arbitrium battery in Hikaru's place. At the same time, Alma is trying to convince Hikaru to go after Aki, but Hikaru hesitates, feeling he has no right to interfere. Aki clearly said she didn't need his help, and her quest for revenge is something he can't relate to, so he doesn't want to impose or risk getting in her way. Meanwhile, Jun has been minding his own business, uninterested in Aki's fate. But when he hears Hikaru say he doesn't want to interfere, it strikes a nerve, reminding him of the regret he felt about his own brother. Suddenly, Jun becomes deeply invested in pushing Hikaru to act. Grabbing him by the collar, Jun demands he stop wallowing in self-pity and make a choice, either let Aki go or stay by her side. Faced with this challenge, Hikaru admits he still wants to save Aki. Encouraged by this realization, Alma tells him that being an outsider doesn't matter, what matters is how he feels. Hikaru has always been the type who can't ignore someone in trouble, and now is no different. With their course of action set, Alma enlists Wanner and Kagemaru to track Aki down. Kagemaru agrees enthusiastically, but Wanner's still whining like an annoying kid who just wants to go home. Meanwhile, back at Arms, Quinn has uncovered a startling truth. The worm user is none other than Aki's sister Fubuki. The revelation makes no sense to him as all records indicate that Fubuki is dead. Adding to the confusion, why would she suddenly appear now? But before Quinn can make sense of it, Alja shows up behind him and casually says that Amaryllis has returned and she's after Hikaru's arbitrium. Quinn is shocked not just by the revelation, but also by the fact that Aljas had been standing there the whole time. Aljas unfazedly explains that Amaryllis resurfaced after learning that Alma had awakened, and he'd been trying to resolve the situation in secret before it escalated, but his secrecy backfired. He didn't think Aki could handle the truth about her sister being puppeteered by Amaryllis, but by keeping her in the dark, he unintentionally pushed Aki right into Amaryllis' manipulative grasp. Back with Aki and Amaryllis, the facade finally drops. Amaryllis, frustrated that Aki didn't deliver Hikaru after all the effort she put into impersonating Fubuki, decides she's done playing nice. She mocks Aki for taking so long to figure out the truth and announces her plan to get rid of her using her puppets. Aki, now realizing the real Fubuki would never behave like this, prepares to defend herself. Amaryllis calls her an idiot for being so slow to catch on and launches her attack. Aki manages to hold her own against the puppets for a while, but Amaryllis switches tactics, pretending to act like Fubuki again to catch Aki off guard. In the moment Aki hesitates, Amaryllis seizes the opportunity to restrain her. With Aki in her grasp, Amaryllis reveals that although she intended to keep Fubuki's body as her host for a while longer, having Aki here is just too convenient, so she might as well take over her body too. But before she can act, Sinus and Dex intervene, grabbing Amaryllis to stop her. But Amaryllis knows she has the upper hand, and she gleefully reminds Aki that destroying her would mean hurting Fubuki as well. Then with chilling cruelty, she recounts how Aki and Fubuki's parents begged her to release Fubuki's body when she first took it over. But Amaryllis refused to let go of such a perfect puppet and killed their parents with her own hands, and Aki is left reeling, completely shattered by the revelation. Sensing her despair, Amaryllis moves in to finish her off and take her body. Just as things seem hopeless, Hikaru and Jun crash through the window, sending Amaryllis tumbling to the ground. Aki, shocked and furious, yells at Hikaru for coming here, knowing full well that Amaryllis is after him. But Hikaru brushes her concerns aside, declaring he doesn't care about the danger because he's here to save his friend. With Hikaru now in the room, Amaryllis switches her focus and lunges at him. But before she can lay a finger on him, Jun steps in her path and blocks her. He then smirks and says there's no way he's letting anyone touch Hikaru, except for him, of course. Aki panickedly tries to stop Jun, pleading with him not to hurt Fubuki in the process. But Jun doesn't care about Fubuki at all because his only goal is to make sure Amaryllis doesn't kill Hikaru, no matter the cost. Just then, Amaryllis grabs Jun and hurls him aside like yesterday's trash to get to Hikaru. But even as he's tossed away, Jun refuses to back down, activating his mecha to restrain her. Amaryllis finds his attempt laughable, mocking him for thinking he can take her on with a cheap knockoff of her own abilities. She sneers, saying it's fitting that a failure like him pilots a mecha, just as useless as he is. Jun is visibly offended, but before he can retort, Amaryllis silences him by covering his mouth and resumes her assault on Hikaru. Alma steps in to block the attack, but every time Amaryllis strikes him, he feels his power draining away. Realizing how dangerous it will be to keep fighting if she can sap their strength, Aki steps in front of Hikaru to shield him. Amaryllis taunts her, asking if she still thinks she's fit to act as Hikaru's bodyguard after everything she's done. But Aki calmly states she isn't protecting Hikaru as a bodyguard, she's doing it because he's her friend and she cares about him. That might sound noble, but Amaryllis points out the harsh reality: as long as she's using Fubuki's body, Aki can't lay a finger on her without risking her sister's life, so that makes Aki dead weight in this fight. True to her words, Amaryllis captures Aki with ease, leaving Hikaru defend for himself. To his credit, he holds his ground remarkably well, but Amaryllis begins using Aki as a human shield. The distraction gives her an opening to strike, and she stabs Hikaru with one of her tentacles. Once she's inside him, she starts draining his arbitrium. As she suspected, Hikaru's arbitrium matches the legendary energy from 100 years ago. Hearing this, Alma feels a strange sense that something important happened back then, though his memories are hazy. Noticing his confusion, Amaryllis smirks, realizing the rumors about Alma losing his memories are true, and for some reason this discovery enrages her, and she stabs Hikaru again, greedily pulling more arbitrium from him. With her prize secured, Amaryllis decides she no longer needs Aki and begins strangling her to death. Aki pleads for help, and in response, Hikaru's body surges with arbitrium, overflowing with energy. Amaryllis is overjoyed, thrilled by the sheer amount of power coursing into her because it's more than she's ever had before. But Hikaru and Alma keep charging the arbitrium and pushing it past its limits, so the overwhelming energy overloads Amaryllis' systems, throwing her into chaos. And while Amaryllis flounders under the surge of power, Hikaru and Alma seize the moment to free Aki. And as they do, a blinding flash of light erupts, engulfing everything around them. When the dust finally settles, Hikaru, Aki, and Jun find themselves sprawled on the ground, unsure of what just happened. The one thing Jun knows for sure is that he's not letting Amaryllis get away with what she said to him. Fueled by pure spite, he springs to his feet, grabs Amaryllis with his mecha, and begins ripping her out of Fubuki's body. Amaryllis fights back, but Jun's sheer pettiness fuels him to overpower her and forcibly separate her from Fubuki. Once free, Fubuki regains control of her body, and Aki is overwhelmed with relief to see her sister safe again. But Amaryllis isn't out of tricks yet. Even without her primary host, she still controls a swarm of puppets and tries to use them to capture Aki. This time, though, without Fubuki as a human shield, Aki fights back with ease. Hikaru steps in next, and with Alma's help, they finally defeat Amaryllis. As she's destroyed, her parting words leave a chilling mark. She blames Alma for her downfall, claiming it's his fault because he caused Yakumo Kagame's death. The next morning, life seems to return to normal, or at least as normal as it gets, as Aki makes her usual dramatic entrance by crashing through Hikaru's newly repaired window, and the two head to school together. On the way, Aki apologizes for all the trouble she caused him, but Hikaru, ever the good friend, brushes it off, reminding her that helping each other out is what friends are for. Encouraged by his words, Aki mentions she has another favor to ask. She wants Hikaru to help her study. Hikaru is baffled, pointing out that she already missed all the tests, so what's the point? Aki explains her real motivation. She wants to catch up on schoolwork so she can help Fubuki relearn everything she missed during the 8 years she was under Amaryllis' control. Fubuki is currently in physical therapy, regaining her strength with arms taking care of her. Aki has decided to stay with the organization and promises to continue guarding Hikaru 24/7. While Hikaru is glad to have her around again, he insists she doesn't need to shadow him quite that much. Meanwhile, at the Kagami Group Research Lab, the construction of a gate to the Mecha U world is finally complete, and once activated, the gate will allow them to take control of all dormant mechas. However, to power the gate, they need the Ordella, and the only one capable of activating it is Alma. Determined to capture him, the group prepares to use any means necessary. Back at Hikaru's house, Alma continues to wrestle with questions about his unrevealed past. Elsewhere, Amaryllis, now desperate and adrift without a host, yearns to return to her body. Her despair is interrupted by the arrival of a mysterious figure, so she panically pleads and swears that she never betrayed him. But her words fall on deaf ears as the man coldly rips her from the host body she had been clinging to, leaving her in shreds. The next morning on the way to school, Hikaru's friends are lurking behind a corner, watching him nervously because there are 2 suspicious people have appeared and started pestering him and Aki. But turns out these 2 are Aram's agents, sent as backup bodyguards for Hikaru because since Aki hasn't been entirely successful at keeping Hikaru safe, she has no say in rejecting their help because this order came straight from ARM's headquarters. By sheer bad luck, Kazuha happens to be nearby. After failing miserably at capturing Hikaru before, he's been stripped of his mecha and demoted to lowly security guard duty. Spotting Hikaru now feels like fate handing him a shot at redemption, so he is now determined to reclaim his honor and tries to arrest Hikaru, but before he can, Aki grabs Hikaru's hand and leaps off the bridge with him, landing on the back of a moving truck. The truck driver, oblivious to 2 teenagers crashing onto his vehicle, keeps driving as if nothing happened. Meanwhile, Hikaru is thoroughly unimpressed with how his morning is turning out. Alma then apologizes for disrupting Hikaru's once normal life, but Hikaru reassures him, saying they're in this together. Whatever madness comes their way, they'll face it side by side, at least until Alma can recover his memories. Speaking of which, Alma has something important to tell Hikaru, but before he gets the chance, they're interrupted by Sinus and Dex. The two are locked in a heated argument about whether honey or jam makes a better breakfast topping. Ironically, they're trying to whip up breakfast for Hikaru and Aki while riding on the truck to the school. But Hikaru says that the truck isn't headed towards school at all. In fact, he has no clue where this vehicle is going. But before they can figure it out, the truck jerks to a stop and the driver collapses, knocked out by a blow dart. Then we see some members of the Kagami group arrive to capture Hikaru, including the 3rd Division head Namba, the psycho girl who looks like Jinx, named Fort, and some new guy nobody knows. Namba clearly doesn't want to be there, so he tells his subordinates to hurry up and get it done. And that's all the fuel Jinx needs because she immediately unleashes a barrage of spikes at Hikaru with her shackled Mecha-Yun machine gun. Aki reacts quickly, grabbing Hikaru and ducking behind a truck as Fort riddles it with bullets, while the poor truck driver definitely will not make it out of this shit alive. While Aki, staying calm under fire, tells Hikaru to leave this to her and run to school before he gets marked absent. Hikaru reluctantly agrees and starts running until Kazuha appears out of nowhere and blocks his path. Meanwhile, Oyama and Kayano are pinned down by Hikaru's friends due to some massive misunderstanding, so they're officially useless for now. Kazuha, looking deadly serious, declares that he's capturing Hikaru to atone for his own failures. But just as things get tense, the new guy from the 3rd Division interrupts, climbing on top of the truck and claiming he'll handle capturing Hikaru. But things then get juicy when Kazuha notices the new guy's mecha is the very one stripped from him when he was demoted and he wants it back so damn bad. So right before the new guy can attack Hikaru, Kazuha lunges at him, wrestling him down in a desperate attempt to reclaim his stolen mecha. Amidst this chaos, Aki yells at Hikaru to stop gawking and keep running to school. He takes off again, only to nearly trip over the unconscious body of the new guy. Turning around, he sees that Kazuha has his mecha back and is now gunning for him. Meanwhile, Aki sneaks up on Fort, trying to take her down, but she dodges just in time. Almost effortlessly, she lines up the perfect shot with her minigun, ready to end Aki, but in a freak accident, she leaps backward into Kazuha, knocking him over. Fort furiously screams at Kazuha for getting in her way, so Kazuha, equally ticked off, yells right back, calling her out for bumping into him with her edgy eye patch. Once she gets off him, he goes straight back to attacking Hikaru, but Hikaru leaps into the air to avoid it. While airborne, he and Alma snap into full battle mode. Kazuha then takes another swing with his whip, but Hikaru and Alma dodge smoothly, grabbing the chain mid-swing and hurling Kazuha straight into Fort, knocking them both to the ground. Fort looks absolutely mortified now that Kazuha is sitting on her, and as the two awkwardly fumble through the situation, Aki sneaks up behind them and knocks them both out cold. Seeing his team completely wiped, the division head figures he's done his part for the day, so he casually clocks out, tossing a half-hearted request to Toos to pick up the new guy in Fort later if she feels like it, because frankly, he doesn't care whether they get captured or not. Meanwhile, Aki and Hikaru are busy tying everyone up, and Alma mentions he's got something important to share with Hikaru. But before he can get it out, Aki calls for help, having managed to tangle herself up in the ropes like a total amateur. Hikaru rushes over to help, but while he's distracted untangling her, Kazuha staggers to his feet and aims for a cheap shot from behind. Alma spots it in time and blocks the attack, but Hikaru still takes a spill and manages to knock himself unconscious in the process. When Hikaru finally wakes up, everything is under control. The Kagami group members are secured, but Alma is visibly upset, blaming himself for Hikaru's injury. Hikaru tries to reassure him, insisting it wasn't his fault, but Alma stubbornly believes Hikaru would be safer without him around and declares that he doesn't want anyone else hurt because of him, leaving Hikaru puzzled. Sensing something deeper, Hikaru asks if Alma has regained his memories, and Alma hesitates, but eventually confirms it. Hikaru thinks this is good news, but Alma then spells that he has his memories back since the fight with Amaryllis, and that makes Hikaru confused because Alma kept it a secret and didn't say anything. Alma then stumbles over his words, but eventually decides that Hikaru doesn't need to get involved, and without another word, he starts crawling away dramatically. Normally, Aki would chase Alma down to keep him from doing anything reckless, but she shrugs it off this time, reasoning that Alma can't get more than 5 meters from Hikaru without losing power. But shockingly, Alma isn't losing power, and to everyone's surprise, he's ridiculously fast for an arm. And before they know it, both Hikaru and Aki have completely lost track of him. Back at Arms, Algis informs Hikaru that Alma must have regained his memories after encountering Amaryllis, so Hikaru wonders how Alma can suddenly move on his own. So Fist steps in to explain that Alma once had a unique ability to generate his own arbitrium, and now that his memories are back, so is that ability. This revelation catches everyone off guard, and naturally, they demand to know why something so important was kept under wraps. Fist has a solid reason, though. Bringing up Alma's traumatic past prematurely could have caused him to shut down entirely, and no one wanted to risk that. Regardless, the priority now is finding Alma, so Algis instructs everyone to keep an eye out for him. But when Hikaru eagerly offers to help, Algis dismisses him, saying that since Alma can move on his own, Hikaru's involvement isn't necessary anymore. This blunt remark stuns both Hikaru and Quen. While Quen sees the silver lining and suggests that Hikaru can now return to his normal life, but Hikaru isn't having it. After everything he's been through with Alma, there's no way he can just go back to being an ordinary civilian, so his refusal to back down forces Algis and Fist to relent and spill the full truth. Back in the Mecha U world, things were dire. Their planet had almost entirely run out of Arbitrium, pushing the Mecha Youths to the brink of extinction. Alma, Fist, and another companion set out on a desperate mission to locate the legendary Ordella, which was said to have the power to restore their home. However, their journey was cut short when they became inactive due to a lack of energy. Fortunately, they managed to crash land on Earth before shutting down completely. On the night of their arrival, Ikumo Kagami happens to be nearby, and he gets curious about the strange light emanating from his family's minds, so he goes to investigate, and that's when he stumbled upon Alma. But not long after, a cave-in happened that would have killed Yakumo if he had been alone. But Alma fused with him just in time, allowing them to escape. Then we see that Fist fused with Yakumo's older brother Tsukido, who was suffering from a mysterious disease linked to Arbitrium. So Tsukido agreed to join the Mecha Youths in their quest for Ordella, hoping to find a cure for himself, and Yakumo joined in too because he was looking for the excitement. They all started searching for Ordella together, and after finally finding it, they dove headfirst into their research to activate it. Days stretched on, tension mounting as they neared the culmination of their work. Eventually, the moment arrived for their efforts to bear fruit, but Yakumo couldn't shake the feeling that things were going a little too smoothly. Tsukido acknowledged Yakumo's concerns, but reassured him that all their test values fell neatly within expectations. Nothing could possibly go wrong, or so he thought. The following day, during the critical process of awakening Ordella, everything went straight to hell. Despite all of Tsukido's rigorous tests, he'd never stopped to consider the aftermath of bringing such a powerful yet unfriendly force to life. The moment Ordella awoke, it lashed out violently, knocking Tsukido and Fist unconscious and severely injuring Yakumo. Alma, by some miracle, was the only one left unscathed, but then panic began to take over him as he wondered what he could do against a monster like Ordella. But Yakumo wasn't about to let a little thing like a near-fatal head wound keep him from stepping up. He steadied Alma, assuring him they'd figure it out together. The two prepared for a fight, though Yakumo's words of confidence couldn't change the fact that Ordella was an absolute beast. Getting close enough to land a blow would require some next-level creativity. Yakumo slammed his fist into the ground, sending chunks of rock flying everywhere to distract Ordella. And while Ordella was dealing with the barrage, Yakumo and Alma launched themselves from above, landing a devastating punch that managed to reseal it. Victory came at a steep cost, though. Yakumo collapsed moments later, and his injuries claimed his life. The trauma of losing Yakumo shattered Alma, so he withdrew into himself, never waking from his grief until he crossed paths with Hikaru. But now with his memories flooding back, Alma is desperate not to let Hikaru meet the same fate. In his guilt-ridden mind, the only solution is to get as far away from Hikaru as possible. While driving himself into an alley to escape, Alma stumbles into Jun, and without hesitation, Jun grabs Alma and tries to fuse with him. But no matter how hard he pushes, it's just not happening. So Jun feels defeated and shrugs it off, accepting that maybe he's just not ready for such a fusion yet. But something about Alma's crushed expression gnaws at him, so Jun gets closer and asks what the hell happened. At the same time, Hikaru stands at the edge of a bridge, lost in thought and looking like the weight of the world is crushing him. Then suddenly, he gets a call from Jun. But when Hikaru answers, he doesn't hear Jun's voice. It's Alma on the line. Alma starts talking about the day they first met, reminiscing about how, despite knowing nothing about him, Hikaru chose to help. Alma acknowledges Hikaru's incredible kindness, but makes it clear he can't keep relying on it. He insists he's capable of managing on his own now and urges Hikaru to let things go back to how they were before they met, to return to his normal life. Hikaru is utterly confused, so he tries to reason with Alma, but Alma's already made up his mind and he ends the call abruptly. He plans to stick with Jun for a while, but just as Jun steps out of the alleyway, Tutu appears and he's clearly not here for a friendly chat. Back on the bridge, Hikaru is still spiraling, questioning everything when Aki shows up and bluntly asks if he's found Alma yet. Hikaru, feeling defeated, tells her it's pointless to keep searching because Alma doesn't need him anymore. But before he can finish, Aki punches him square in the face, She immediately apologizes, claiming she tried to hold back, but she couldn't listen to him talk like that. Aki knows Alma is only acting this way because he's tormented by his past. She understands what it's like to carry the crushing weight of guilt, which is exactly why she knows Alma needs someone by his side right now. Even if Hikaru thinks Alma doesn't need him anymore, Aki does, and she begs him to help bring Alma back. Hikaru, realizing she's absolutely right, finally agrees. But just as they're about to move, Aki gets a call from ARM's headquarters because Alma has been captured by the Kagami group, and they're planning to use him to unseal Ordella. Meanwhile, Jun assumes Tudo has come to drag him back home, but he's not having it, and in a desperate move, he grabs Alma and tries to swing him like a baseball bat. But Tudo effortlessly catches Jun mid-swing and slaps a shackle onto Alma to keep him in check. Tudo then explains he's actually acting under orders from Jun's older brother, and then apologizing with zero sincerity, he informs them both that they're heading straight to Kagami headquarters, tossing them into the back of a truck like luggage. Elsewhere, Aki and Hikaru are busy searching for Alma, but Hikaru's snail-like running speed isn't helping, so Aki hoists him onto her shoulders to pick up the pace. Despite their efforts, they're utterly clueless about Alma's whereabouts until Quen calls Aki, announcing that he's found someone to assist in the search. Seconds later, Kajimaru comes crashing onto the roof, declaring himself Aki's savior. His entrance is dramatic, but Warner just wants to go home because he's beyond done listening to Kajimaru's non-stop yelling. Even Hikaru can't stand Kajimaru's booming voice, which is so obnoxiously loud that Kagami scouts on the ground nearly overhear them. Aki frustratedly tries to call Quen back to request literally anyone else, but she can't get through. On Quen's end, he's discovered he's lost all external signals. Moments later, Kayana bursts in, reporting that a citywide jamming signal is scrambling their communications, so if they want to locate Alma, they'll have to hit the streets themselves. And while they're in the dark about who's behind this, All just immediately suspects the Kagami group and resolves to personally step into the fray. Meanwhile, Tubino arrives at the Kagami Ordella Research Lab, hauling Jun and Alma in tow. The director of the 3rd Division then greets him with unbridled enthusiasm, thrilled they can finally proceed to the next phase of the plan. He showers Jun with praise for capturing Alma, but when an assistant takes Alma to the holding chamber, the director notices Jun has been gagged. So he confusedly asks Tudo what's going on, but Tudo brushes it off, claiming that they were just having some fun. Not wanting to delve into Jun's questionable preferences, the director lets it slide, thanking him for a job well done and inviting him to witness what he hypes up as the century's most significant event. Jun has no clue what he's staring at, so the director tells him it's the Ordella Gate, and it's a portal to the world of the Mecha Yude. Once they awaken Ordella, they plan to harness its power to invade the Mecha Yude world and enslave its inhabitants, all for the glory of the Kagami group. Jun is utterly floored by what he's hearing because he never imagined his brother would pour this much effort into such a staggeringly stupid plan. Right on cue, Jun's older brother Ohido shows up, looking thoroughly annoyed to see Jun's ugly face ruining his big moment. But since everything is already prepared, Ohido doesn't bother kicking him out. Instead, he coldly orders the team to begin awakening Ordella. As the activation sequence begins, Alma regains consciousness and instantly starts panicking. Seeing Ordella before him, he realizes the scientists are using him to break its seal. So Alma desperately pleads with them to stop, warning that Ordella is far too dangerous to unleash. But the director is undeterred because he is confident in their years of technological advancements. He believes they can control Ordella's power. And once he does, he plans to open the gate to the Mecha Yude world, even teasing Alma with the possibility of reuniting with old friends, though they'll all be shackled under Kagami's rule. Alma longs to see his homeworld again, but there's a problem, which is that Ordella is not a portal. He can't fully explain it, but he knows for sure that Ordella isn't what the director thinks, so Alma desperately begs him again to stop before it's too late. The director scoffs, convinced Alma is bluffing to buy time, and orders the sequence to continue. As Ordella begins to awaken, the containment field that was designed to keep it under control starts to fail, so Jun realizes this thing might break loose. The scientists scramble, reporting that Ordella's arbitrium levels are skyrocketing far beyond their ability to contain it. Moments later, Ordella lashes out, destroying everything in sight. When Jun begs Ohido to shut it down, warning it's too dangerous, Ohido just laughs because this chaos is exactly what he wanted. The entire lab begins to crumble, with Ordella's power surging uncontrollably, the enormous icicles spreading so far that Hikaru and Aki can spot them from the street below. They instantly know something terrible has happened, but before Aki can figure out their next move, Hikaru has already bolted off, determined to save Alma. Inside the lab, the director is frozen in disbelief because his so-called perfect plan has failed catastrophically. Realizing the danger, his panicked assistants beg him to evacuate with them. Meanwhile, Elhido is up in the control room, utterly indifferent to his own safety because his singular focus is his goal. But before chaos erupted, Tudu whisked Jun to a secure location to protect him. And when Jun regains consciousness, he demands answers. Tudu is willing to spill the truth but warns Jun that he'll need to be ready to act once he hears it. On the roof, the director is moments away from boarding a helicopter with Alma to ensure his own escape. But before liftoff, Hikaru shouts for him to release Alma. The director stops and recognizes Hikaru as Alma's former companion, so Hikaru turns to Aki to tell her to destroy the wreckage, but only then Hikaru realizes that he is alone, and we also see that Aki realizes that too. And with no other choice, Hikaru starts begging the director to not leave and wait for Aki, but the director decides to ignore this idiot entirely and commands everyone aboard the helicopter. But out of nowhere, Quen appears to back up Hikaru. Relieved but desperate, Hikaru asks Quen to keep the guards distracted while he searches for Aki. Unfortunately, Quen is just as useless as Hikaru in a fight, leaving him clueless about how to hold him off. Fort then fires her machine gun at him, and by some miracle, Quen miraculously avoids getting hit. Yet he's no match for a mecha user in combat, so if he wants to survive, he'll have to think fast or face certain death. Quen then glances around quickly, and that's when he spots a shackled mecha Yu nearby. Without wasting a moment, he pulls out a device he crafted specifically to undo such restraints and rushes to free the mecha so they can fuse. Although Quen lacks a significant fighting experience, having the mecha gives him just enough power to stand his ground, at least for a short time. But then reality hits hard because his body's untrained to handle a mecha, and after a few minutes he burns through all his arbitrium and nearly collapses, so he goes back to square one and starts running for his life while apologizing for not doing more to help his team. But suddenly Eki comes back and reassures him, telling him he's done an excellent job because he bought her more than enough time to regroup with Hikaru and Warner. However, as Eki tries to rejoin the others, she is intercepted by Kazuha, who is eager for a rematch, and he refuses to let her pass without a fight. Kazuha reveals that he has undergone a process to integrate his mecha directly into his body, and he's convinced this enhancement will allow him to completely surpass Aki. To prove his superiority, he launches an attack, but Aki doesn't even bother to defend herself with Sinus or Dex. Instead, she catches his whip with her bare hands and calmly informs him that his losses are not because of his mecha, but they are the result of his lack of skill and inner strength. She tells him bluntly that until he accepts his own weaknesses and learns from them, he will continue to fail. Kazuha refuses to accept her words and charges at her again. But this time, Eki is done being patient, and she quickly knocks him out and turns her attention back to catching up with Hikaru and Quen. But before she can make her move, yet another obstacle emerges. The newcomer introduces himself as Namba and claims he only wants to talk. Aki, having no time for pleasantries, immediately tries to knock him out, but Namba easily evades her strikes. With a casual demeanor, he explains that he has no real interest in fighting. He's only here because it's his job, and if he doesn't do it, his paycheck will suffer, ruining his carefully planned retirement. He even begs Aki to walk away so he doesn't have to harm a kid. Aki, however, refuses to back down, leaving Namba no choice but to engage her in battle. Aki then starts darting across the room, moving unpredictably in an attempt to confuse Namba. After building momentum, she goes in for a finishing blow, but Namba easily intercepts her attack with his mecha, sneering, "Kids like you shouldn't be playing with powerful toys like that." He acknowledges that she has some talent, but warns that it's time she learns a harsh lesson. And with that, he draws his sword mecha and engages Aki in combat. Despite his vast experience, Aki impressively holds her ground and matches his attacks with remarkable skill. Meanwhile, Hikaru and Warner crash land in front of Tus. The director, now clearly losing control of the situation, decides to make his escape. He quickly boards his helicopter, determined to flee before the tide turns against him completely. But just as the helicopter begins to lift off, it's suddenly stopped in midair by Creed, the former member of the 3rd Division, who holds the helicopter down with nothing but his bare hands. Quen feels relieved to see backup arrive, but he's baffled as to why Creed is helping them, so Kayano casually explains that Creed has a crush on her and is trying to get on her good side. While Creed focuses on keeping the helicopter grounded, Kayano declares that she'll handle Tus herself. This frees Hikaru and Warner to board the helicopter and rescue Alma. Hikaru is ready to proceed, but they've overlooked a major problem. Ford is still active, and from the helicopter, she opens fire on the group below, creating chaos. One of her stray shots hits a cluster of unstable oil barrels, causing a massive explosion. The blast sends Hikaru, Warner, Fort, and even Tus flying, rendering everyone unconscious in the aftermath. On the other side of the building, Namba and Aki both hear the thunderous explosion. So with a smirk, Namba decides he's done enough to file a decent work report shrugs and tells Aiki that he's leaving and reassures her that she won't have to deal with him anymore. Meanwhile, in a helicopter, Hikaru is the first to regain consciousness, and shortly after the director wakes up as well, seething with rage that a group of kids has managed to thwart him. Determined to deal with Hikaru personally, he grabs Fort's gun and aims it at him. Wano remains unconscious, unable to assist, and without a mecha, Hikaru has no chance of standing up to gunfire. But thankfully, Keijimaru is still awake, giving Hikaru an idea, a dangerous but effective plan. Hikaru then deliberately steps into the line of fire to draw the director's attention, and while the director focuses on him, Keijimaru sneaks up from behind and claws at his face. This distraction gives Hikaru the opening he needs to rush to Alma. Although Alma is still unconscious, Hikaru manages to tie him to his arm for support and delivers a powerful punch that knocks the director out cold. A short while later, Alma regains consciousness and finds Hikaru badly injured, so he is horrified and begins to panic, blaming himself for everything that's happened. And then he insists that Hikaru didn't need to risk himself to save him because this fight is no longer Hikaru's responsibility, and also he is the one who awakened Ordella, so it's his burden to bear. Alma then vows to stop Ordella alone to prevent anyone else from getting hurt the way Yakumo was. He admits Yakumo had sensed something was wrong, but Alma ignored his warnings in his eagerness to reach his goal. That decision cost Yakumo his life, and Alma refuses to let Hikaru suffer the same fate. Hikaru, understanding Alma's guilt over Yakumo's death, offers sympathy, but reminds him that they still have a city to save, and despite his injuries, Hikaru forces himself to his feet and insists they need to act fast if they're going to stop Ordella. Alma tries to dissuade him, but Hikaru resolutely declares that even if Alma refuses to help, he'll face Ordella alone, though it's likely he won't survive the battle. Realizing the futility of letting Hikaru go by himself, Alma eventually agrees to join him. Hikaru, despite the odds, expresses confidence that as long as they fight together, they'll find a way to win. Hikaru and Alma then leap out of the helicopter, aiming directly for Ordella, but it quickly spots them and begins firing lasers while launching ice spears in their direction. The duo tries to smash through the ice, but it's impossibly sturdy, and the constant barrage of lasers gives them no chance to recover or catch their breath. Meanwhile, Quen and Kayano analyze the ice crystals and discover that they're composed of high-density arbitrium, making them unbreakable for both humans and mechas alike. Although the seal on Ordella has been broken, it's still unable to move freely for now, so their best shot at victory lies in using Alma's power to restrain it. And since the rings around Ordella were originally created by Alma, channeling his arbitrium into them should be enough to seal Ordella again. So this means Hikaru and Alma must target the rings around its body, but it won't be easy, as Ordella will see them coming. Alma and Hikaru then prepare themselves and begin flying toward Ordella once more. However, as they approach, arbitrium spikes materialize in their path, growing more numerous and relentless the closer they get. So at this rate, there's no way they'll reach the rings. Ordella has no blind spots, attacking anything that comes near the moment it's detected, leaving them stumped on how to proceed. That's when Hikaru comes up with a plan and asks Quen if Aki can assist. He explains his idea to the group, which hinges entirely on Tuz's sniper skills. Tuz understands the high stakes that if Ordella isn't stopped, the entire city could be destroyed, so without hesitation she agrees to help and brings out her sniper rifle. The goal is for Tuz to divert Ordella's attention for just a few crucial seconds, and with Aki supporting her, Tuz fires a max output shot, hitting Ordella square in her back. The bullet does no damage, but it successfully grabs Ordella's attention, prompting it to turn and fire its laser at Tuz instead. Kayano and Keijimaru then step in as the defense team, raising their shields to block the laser and keep Tuz safe. Their efforts give Hikaru and Alma the opening they need, allowing them to sneak behind Ordella and strike the rings to reactivate the seal. At first, it seems like the plan is working as Ordella begins to shrink, but suddenly the rings stop functioning and Ordella reverts back to its original form. And without hesitation, Ordella resumes attacking Hikaru and Alma, forcing Quen to call on Tuz to fire another shot to draw its attention. Tuz does as planned, successfully diverting Ordella's focus. However, it seems Ordella is catching on to their strategy, so this time it doesn't forget about Hikaru and fires an additional laser in his direction. But just as the blast is about to hit, Jun leaps in and blocks it just in time. Meanwhile, the relentless attacks from Ordella have left the building Aki, and the others were stationed on dangerously unstable. Realizing the imminent collapse, they quickly evacuate to safety. Back with Hikaru and Jun, Hikaru expresses his gratitude for Jun's timely save. With his newly upgraded mecha, Jun confidently offers to take on Ordella alone. However, before he can charge in, Alma intervenes, warning him that it's too dangerous for him to handle on his own. Annoyed by their lack of faith in his abilities, Jun decides to prove them wrong, so he shoves them aside and charges straight at Ordella. As Jun closes the distance, Ordella retaliates by launching arbitrium crystals at him. But Jun wasn't bluffing because he effortlessly smashes through the supposedly indestructible crystals, leaving Alma and Hikaru genuinely impressed. However, while Jun can handle the crystals with ease, Ordella's lasers are a different story, because when the lasers start targeting him, Jun is forced to retreat and take cover. And then he realizes that he can't defeat Ordella alone, but Hikaru notes that his ability to break the crystals is still significant, so he curiously asks how Jun managed it. Jun then explains it's all thanks to his new mecha, which he received from Tudu. The upgraded version of his old mecha grants him the ability to control various flows of arbitrium, provided the user has the skill to wield it effectively. And since Jun is clearly a skilled pilot, he's able to utilize its capabilities with ease. Hikaru and Alma tell Jun he's really awesome, and Jun is soaking up the praise, clearly enjoying every second of it. But the celebration doesn't last long because they still got a mission to complete, and it won't be easy getting close to Ordella, with those lasers constantly raining down. Jun had hoped to conserve some of his strength for later, but it's clear that if they want to break through, he's going to have to go all out. Just as Jun gears up to charge in again, Hikaru stops him, suggesting they work together to take Ordella down. Jun doesn't mind teaming up, but he questions Hikaru's plan, pointing out that they already tried sealing Ordella once and it didn't work. Hikaru admits that's true, but Quentin's analysis of Jun's earlier fight revealed that Jun's mecha seems to weaken Ordella on contact. So if Jun can pin Ordella down while Hikaru delivers a powerful punch, they might be able to seal it for good this time. And with the plan in place, Jun breaks off a piece of arbitrium crystal for Hikaru to use as a weapon. Then the two take to the skies, prepared to execute their strategy. Hikaru then hurls Jun directly at Ordella, and Jun successfully restrains it before it can react, creating the perfect opening. Acting quickly, they hurl the arbitrium crystal into Ordella's core, ensuring it won't recover anytime soon. Jun then begins repairing the rings needed to seal Ordella, while Hikaru and Alma prepare for their final move. They then wind up for the strongest punch they've ever delivered, or given the sheer size of their fist, more like a meteor crashing to Earth. The devastating impact levels the Kagami building and much of the surrounding area, but it succeeds in sealing Ordella once and for all, so everything seems to have worked out perfectly. Jun, however, is far from pleased, and he furiously complains that no one warned him they'd be unleashing a punch of mass destruction like that. And with all the chaos and destruction, it's clear there's no way the Kagami group can cover this up, especially with news helicopters circling and broadcasting the aftermath to the world. Speaking of the Kagami group, there's still something Jun needs to take care of, and without a word, he turns and starts walking away. Hikaru calls out, asking where he's going, but Jun tells him to stay out of it because this is a family matter that he needs to handle on his own. Alma doesn't fully understand the situation, but he can sense its importance to Jun, so Alma simply wishes him good luck. A little while later, Jun confronts his brother in a shadowy alleyway, and this time he's not falling for any tricks because he already knows Amaryllis is the one pulling the strings. Amaryllis is startled he's figured it out but scoffs, mocking him for being a failure. She claims there's nothing he can do even if he knows she's controlling his brother, but Jun doesn't waste time with words and immediately launches an attack. However, Amaryllis grabs his mecha mid-strike, reminding him that she has the ability to drain arbitrium directly from people. Then as she begins sucking Jun's energy, her confidence grows. But Jun quickly flips the script and counters with the same power because his new mecha also has an energy-draining ability, and his version is far superior. As the tables turn, Jun begins draining Amaryllis' energy instead, leaving her reeling. And with no hesitation, Jun declares this is the end because he's going to destroy her once and for all. Amaryllis desperately tries to reason with him, warning that if she's destroyed, his brother might die too. But Jun, always a step ahead, reveals he had already anticipated this, so he specifically learned how to extract a mecha yud from someone without harming them. And without a second thought, he executes the process, successfully freeing his brother from Amaryllis' control. Amaryllis writhes in agony on the ground as her power completely fades, and knowing he's won, Jun reflects on his earlier conversation with Tudu. Tudu had initially tried to persuade Jun to take the new mecha and defeat Ordella without fully explaining the details. But Jun wasn't willing to blindly follow orders, so he demanded the complete truth. Tudu, impressed by Jun's assertiveness, realized that Jun was finally ready to take on the challenges ahead and do what needed to be done. Meanwhile, Hikaru and Alma stand atop one of the towering arbitrium spikes. Despite the widespread destruction throughout the city, it seems like most of the chaos has been resolved. Hikaru had initially planned to stick with Alma only until he regained his memories. But now, Alma asks if Hikaru would stay by his side until he finds a way back to his homeworld. And without hesitation, Hikaru agrees, and the two shake hands to solidify their bond. Down below, however, the situation is far from peaceful. Tuda, battered and badly wounded in the chaos, struggles to deliver an urgent message to the ARMS team. Slowly, he hobbles over to Quen, who, suspicious of his intentions, calls for backup from Aki. But when Aki arrives, Tuda collapses from exhaustion, so it becomes clear he isn't here to fight. At the same time, Algis and Fist approach Alma and Hikaru. And now that Alma has regained his memories, he takes the opportunity to properly apologize to Fist for what happened all those years ago. Though he still hasn't fully come to terms with the past, he's determined to move forward with his life. Then Alma asks Algis and Fist to join forces with him again, but Fist's cold, mean stare makes it clear he's not here for a friendly conversation. Meanwhile, Eki is scaling the towering arbitrium spikes carrying a wounded Tudu. As they climb, Tuda warns her that Hikaru is in grave danger. He explains the situation involving Jun's brother and how he was being controlled by Amaryllis, and it was not just Ohito. In fact, Amaryllis had been orchestrating this for generations. Every leader of the Kagami group had fallen under her control as she moved from one host to another, draining their energy to sustain herself. One day, however, Ohito uncovered the truth, so with a lot of determination, he devised a plan to defeat her before she could take over his body. Knowing he might not survive to see it through, he prepared for the worst, anticipating that Amaryllis would target Jun next. So to protect Jun, Ohito began developing the artificial Mecha Yude. And once complete, it would have the power to overpower Amaryllis and even cure Jun's illness. Ohito entrusted the plan to Tudo, insisting it remains a secret from Jun to ensure his safety. Tudo questioned whether keeping this from Jun was the right decision, arguing that Jun was far more capable than Ohito might realize. However, Ohito believed secrecy was the best course of action at the time. In the present day, Ohito regains consciousness and realizes that Jun has freed him from Amaryllis' control. Overwhelmed with guilt, he apologizes for putting Jun in such danger, but Jun furiously tells him he doesn't care about the risks or the secrets. What bothers him most is how everyone treats him like a child who can't handle himself, and he reminds Ohito that he was more than strong enough to defeat Amaryllis on his own. Hearing this, Ohito begins to understand that Tuda was right, because Jun is far tougher than he ever gave him credit for. Ohito then apologizes again for underestimating him and expresses excitement about what Jun might achieve in the future. However, he warns that their work isn't done yet. So Jun confusedly asks what he means, and Ohito reveals that Amaryllis wasn't the true mastermind behind all of this shit. Back atop the spike, Algis suddenly shackles Alma, and that shit immobilizes him. Then in a shocking twist, it's revealed that Algis was Yakumo all along. Hikaru is in complete disbelief because Yakumo was supposed to have died a long time ago. Fist confirms it, adding with a twisted smirk that Yakumo is indeed dead, but he's been puppeteering his lifeless body for his own sinister goals. Turning to Alma, Fist explains that on the day of the accident, just like Alma and Amaryllis, he evolved and gained the ability to create his own arbitrium, and he reminds Alma that Ordella was the reason they came to this world in the first place. Alma admits that Ordella might hold the key to saving their people, but if awakening Ordella means the destruction of the human world, he won't do it. Fist waves off Alma's concerns and clarifies that he doesn't plan to awaken Ordella traditionally. Instead, he wants to break the seal and claim its power for himself. For the past 100 years, Fist has been secretly researching how to harness Ordella's energy, confident that with its power, he can evolve all mechas, and once they're evolved, they'll finally be able to create their own arbitrium. Sure, it sounds like a genius plan at first glance, but Alma knows better than anyone how dangerous Ordella's power truly is. He warns that if Fist proceeds, it will likely lead to humanity's ruin. Fist, however, couldn't care less because he despises the humans, calling them weak, illogical creatures. He's disgusted by the fact that Mecha Yude are forced to rely on humans to function, and is determined to change that. With Ordella's power, he envisions a future where mechas no longer depend on humans, where they seize control of the world and make it their own. Fist then extends his hand to Alma, inviting him to join in taking Ordella's power and creating a new home for their people. Alma, while desperate to save his people, firmly refuses because he won't sacrifice humanity to do it. Fist, visibly disappointed, accuses Alma of being corrupted by human stupidity. But Fist isn't the type to let rejection slow him down, so he uses shackles to bind Alma and forcibly begins infusing with him, determined to break the seal and claim Ordella's power for himself. Fist then starts walking away, but Hikaru refuses to let him go, even though he doesn't have the strength to stop him. Just then, Aki and Jun arrive to warn Hikaru, but it's already too late. Hikaru tells them that Alma has been taken and insists they go after him. However, after barely 5 seconds together, Aki and Jun start arguing over who gets to take Hikaru to rescue Alma. Aki, tired of the bickering, tosses Tudo into Jun's arms and tells him to focus on his injured friend instead. Jun, seeing how bad Tudo looks, asks what happened. So Tudo admits he tried to take on Fist alone and failed miserably, But despite his injuries, he assures Jun he'll be fine on his own. So Jun is relieved and decides to help Hikaru, and the three leap down the giant spike to pursue Fist. On the ground, Fist has already reached the crater where Ordella lies, but before he can break the seal again, Aki, Jun, and Hikaru come crashing down from the sky. Aki accuses Fist of lying to them by pretending to be Alges, but Fist coolly replies that he hasn't lied about anything. The mission of ARMS has always been to save Mecha Yude by any means necessary, and that hasn't changed. But Jun doesn't care about Fist's motives because he's focused on one thing, and it's getting Alma back. Fist dismisses Jun, claiming it's pointless to fight him because he'll never win. But then Fist's body begins to malfunction, catching him off guard long enough for Jun to land a clean hit and grab Alma. Aki seizes the moment, launching off Jun's shoulders and delivering a powerful punch that sends Fist flying. With Alma back in their hands, things are looking up, but Aki presses the attack, and this time Fist is ready, so he uses shackles to immobilize Sinus and Dex before pinning Aki to the ground by her neck. Fist then calls out to a fragment of Amaryllis that survived and was hidden in Jun's jacket. The fragment responds, crawling out and pleading with Fist to grant her more power. And without hesitation, Fist injects Amaryllis with a mysterious serum, something akin to a mecha steroid, which causes her to grow massively in size. Now towering over the battlefield, Amaryllis immediately knocks Aki away. Hikaru wants to stop her, but Jun holds him back, explaining that his mecha is the only one capable of countering Amaryllis naturally. Jun then slams Amaryllis to the ground and quickly moves to attack Fist. However, Fist is already familiar with the tech from Jun's mecha and effortlessly steals it, creating an extra fist on his back. Jun, stunned by what he's seeing, fails to notice Amaryllis sneaking up behind him, and then she pins him to the ground, leaving him helpless. Fist didn't originally plan to kill anyone, but Jun's interference leaves him no choice, so he decides to end Jun once and for all. But just as Jun's fate seems sealed, Hikaru launches a surprise attack on Fist from behind. And while the attack doesn't harm Fist, it distracts him long enough to stop him from killing Jun, but Fist furiously shifts his focus back to Alma and tries ripping him away from Hikaru. He warns Hikaru to let go or risk losing his arm, but Hikaru stubbornly holds on, channeling every ounce of his energy into Alma in a desperate attempt to break free. The sudden surge of energy catches Fist off guard and it overloads his body, causing his cores to explode. Though he's controlling Yakumo's body, it's still a corpse held together only by machinery to keep it functioning. Realizing his time is running out, Fist grabs Hikaru and drags him into the crater. There he rips Alma off Hikaru's body once again and begins using him to break Ordella's seal. As Alma regains consciousness, he pleads with Fist to stop, but it's too late because the process has already begun. Then an Arbitrium shell forms around Fist as he absorbs Ordella's energy, and he orders Amaryllis to guard him while the power transfer completes. And with limitless power flowing into him, Fist turns to Alma one last time, asking if he's ready to reconsider and share Ordella's power. Alma, unwavering, ignores the offer and calls out to Hikaru, urging him to get back up. Fist, unable to understand why Alma continues to resist, grows impatient, and to prove the magnitude of what he's gaining even before completing the transfer, Fist decides to give Alma a glimpse of the incredible power he's been missing. Fist then taps into Ordella's power, and with each moment, the Arbitrium is drained from every human in the city, leaving them collapsing one by one. Amused by the chaos, Fist seems unstoppable until Hikaru interrupts, refusing to let him continue. Fist groans in frustration, wishing Hikaru would just stay down. But no matter how many times Hikaru is beaten, he keeps standing back up. Hikaru then reaches out to Alma, and together they charge up their energy, forcing Fist to rip Alma off and even sacrifice his own arm just to maintain control. This disruption stops Fist's power display, allowing the humans nearby to recover. But Fist, now consumed by rage, decides mercy is no longer an option, so he fires a deadly blast at Alma. Alma has no time to react, but Hikaru throws himself in the way, pushing Alma to safety. But that damn heroic move causes him a massive hole in his chest, and it looks freaking bad. Fist furiously at wasting a kill shot on the wrong target, but he doesn't have time for regrets because the Arbitrium shell around him has fully formed, bringing him closer to total assimilation with Ordella. Meanwhile, Amaryllis is feeding on Ordella's infinite energy, growing stronger with every second, and she basks in her newfound power, but quickly refocuses when Fist commands her to protect him. Then when Jun and Aki arrive, Amaryllis attacks immediately. Jun manages to block her strikes, but Aki is frozen in horror as she spots Hikaru's lifeless body with a gaping hole in his chest. As chaos unfolds, a sudden cave-in forces Amaryllis to drive the Arbitrium shell onto a nearby skyscraper. Back in the crater, Aki manages to get Jun and Hikaru out just in time, but both are unconscious and Aki herself is running out of strength. At the arm's base, Kayano analyzes the energy radiating from Fist's shell, and her calculations reveal a grim reality, and that Fist will complete his assimilation in 30 minutes. And once he does, he'll have the power to drain the arbitrium from every human on Earth. Just then, she notices a man she's never seen before standing behind her, so he quickly introduces himself as Natra, the chief analyst of the White Ravens from the Kagami Group. Natra explains that both the Kagami Group and arms have been manipulated by Fist and Amaryllis, so the Kagami members are eager to help in any way they can. Though Kayano is still processing this unexpected revelation, the dire situation leaves no room for questions, so she accepts their assistance. Meanwhile, Aki is lucky to have been found by her friends from arms just as she collapses. They carry her back to their makeshift base along with Hikaru and Jun for treatment. Hikaru's condition, however, remains critical, and when Aki regains consciousness, her first question is about Hikaru. So Quen explains that while Hikaru is still alive, his condition is rapidly deteriorating and the equipment they have may not be enough to save him. In another part of the base, Jun remains unconscious in his bed as Ohito and Tudu keep watch over him. Both feel guilty for dragging Jun into this situation, believing it should have been left to the adults. Realizing they can't leave Jun without his mecha, Ohito calls in Kazuha and Tus to ensure Jun's safety. Meanwhile, Warner is losing his nerve after seeing the towering form of Amaryllis, now encased in the arbitrium shell. Deciding it's too dangerous to stay alone, he opts to join Kazuha and Tus, who are heading for a safer location. At the same time, the rest of the team gathers in the analysis tent for a strategy meeting, and they explain that the only thing capable of breaking through the arbitrium shell is the Asclepius mecha, but since Jum is unavailable to pilot it, Tudo will have to step up and use it to destroy the shell. However, reaching the shell will be an immense challenge with Amaryllis standing guard, so to keep her occupied, someone needs to engage her directly. And without hesitation, Aki volunteers to take on this dangerous task. Meanwhile, an evacuation order is issued to all citizens for their safety, but Meru, in her eternal quest for relationship drama, completely ignores it. Any sensible person would have run for shelter after what happened earlier, but not Meru. She saw Hikaru, Jun, and Aki atop one of those spikes, and she is convinced there's some juicy love story brewing. Then she spots Kazuha and the others carrying Jun away, and without knowing shit, her instincts kick in, because there's no drama without Jun in the mix. So without hesitation, she smacks Jun in the face, waking him up so he can back toward Hikaru. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the city, Aki leads the White Ravens in an all-out assault against Amaryllis. Amaryllis, trying to hold them off, deploys drones to slow them down, but Imada and the others bulldoze through, launching Aki directly at her. The clash between Aki and Amaryllis is fierce, and at first Aki appears to have the upper hand. But Amaryllis, ever calculating, taunts her by bringing up Hikaru's critical injury. The jab breaks Aki's focus, giving Amaryllis the chance to knock her to the ground and mock her further. But just as things look bleak, a smoke bomb suddenly goes off and Kayano calls out to Aki, saying someone has arrived to help. Aki turns, and through the dissipating smoke, she sees Fubuki standing tall. And by the time the smoke clears, the two sisters are side by side with Sinus and Dex, and together their combined strength overwhelms Amaryllis in a single devastating blow. Now with Amaryllis defeated, the focus shifts to Tudo, who must break through the arbitrium shell. But before he can act, their worst fears come true. Fitz completes his assimilation, fully merging with Ordella, and at the same moment, we see that Hikaru's heart monitor flatlines. Warner freaks out at the thought of being trapped, and Kazuha suggests that they should simply destroy the rubble. However, one of the students warns him that if he isn't careful, his actions could trigger a cave-in. Meru speaks up, checking on his mecha Yude and wondering if it can lend a hand. But Kazuha simply responds that his device can't talk, being nothing more than a tool. Curious, Jun asks Kajimaru about the special abilities of Tus and Kazuha's mecha Yudes. Kajimaru explains that Tus's mecha Yude, called Scythe, has the power to sense light, while Kazuha's device, named Adele, is renowned for its high intelligence. Kajimaru believes these machines might be the key to helping everyone escape, so Jun orders both Tus and Kazuha to remove their shackles. Tus goes first, and as soon as Scythe is set free, she suddenly begins screaming, overwhelmed by the joy of finally being able to talk after 30 long years. Greeting her warmly, Kajimaru is touched when Scythe recognizes him, exclaiming how glad she is that he's still alive, and she even points out that she senses a peculiar light coming from a certain spot. Kazuha, however, is reluctant to release Adele, worried that he might seek revenge. Jun insists that they won't be able to escape unless everyone is free, so Kazuha reluctantly removes the shackles. Jun then turns to Adele, asking if he can find a way out of their confinement. Adele gathers information by holding onto Scythe and Kajimaru, reading their memories. Within moments, he analyzes the situation and presents a plan. Adele explains that Scythe must fire a projectile arbitrium behind Kazuha, while the other students hold him firmly in place and Keijimaru must shield everyone from harm. When Saita's weapon reaches its full power, the students should release Kazuha, allowing him to use the momentum to demolish the debris. Recognizing that precise timing is crucial, Adele tells Jun to lead the operation. With everyone getting into position, Saita fires her weapon and the students struggle to maintain their grip as Adele transforms into a massive fist. At Jun's signal, they let go of Kazuha, who uses the built-up momentum to crush the rubble, clearing the path for their escape. They celebrate their hard-fought victory, but soon notice that the cocoon they had been relying on has been destroyed. Perplexed and concerned, Jun instructs Warner and his friends to take him to Ikaro, determined to uncover what's happening next. When they finally reach the camp, Jun is shocked to find Hikaru in a dire state, and he immediately calls for Eki's assistance to help Hikaru recover. He speaks with Ohido, who asks why he has returned, and Jun explains that he intends to use his Asclepius to awaken Hikaru. He believes that Asclepius can control the flow of Arbitrium, the very force that had helped him ease his illness, and that by channeling everyone's Arbitrium into Hikaru's body, they can revive him. Ohido objects, arguing that if Asclepius were to control so much Arbitrium, it would be irreparably damaged, and once lost, it cannot be rebuilt, especially when it is needed to treat his condition. But Jun is so damn determined to save Hikaru, so Ohido eventually relents. Jun then attaches Asclepius to Hikaru's body and explains his plan to everyone. When the others protest, he passionately reminds them that Hikaru sacrificed his life to protect them, and that his survival is vital. Reluctantly, they all agree to cooperate, and they each hold onto a fragment of Asclepius as Jun commands, channeling his power to save Hikaru. In a surreal sequence, Hikaru finds himself dreaming, confused about his whereabouts. Suddenly, Jun's arm grabs hold of him and his friends call out, urging him to wake up as he begins to recall fragments of his past. As everyone's Arbitrium flows into his body, he starts to remember everything, though they struggle to revive him, and the natural energies note that his Arbitrium level remains unchanged. Then Adele proposes a plan. If they all stick together, they can increase the density of Arbitrium. Their collective effort seems to be working until Fist appears, watching with growing alarm as he realizes his own body is beginning to crumble. With urgency, Fist flies toward the group. Hikaru, now slowly regaining consciousness, remembers his friends, and Alma encourages him to rise. He activates Alma's powers, realizing he must take a step forward. But then an explosion rocks the camp, and everyone sees Fist clinging to Jun, declaring that he has found the perfect vessel. Fist seizes control of Jun's body, announcing that he now wields the power to rule the world. But amidst the chaos, Hikaru gets back on his feet, determined to fight and save his friend. Back in the past, we see Tsukido alongside Fist as they overhear relatives berating him for being useless and lamenting that he can't even produce an heir for the clan. Fist is puzzled by their hatred and asks Tsukido. So Tsukido tells him that although he is the eldest son, he was born with a frail body. And also, ever since Yakumo played a pivotal role in expanding the family business, everyone expects Yakumo to be the heir instead. Fist then quietly wonders if he harbors any resentment towards Yakumo, but he quickly admits that he deeply loves his younger brother, feeling grateful for the way Yakumo's talents helped develop the city. He recalls that before leaving his homeworld, he had appointed Alma as the leader of the Mecha Youth, a decision he once considered the most logical choice. Yet, as time passed, he realized that he still longed to be the leader himself. In response, Tsukido suggests that they make a solemn promise. No matter what happens, they will always support their younger siblings. After the ensuing tragedy, Tsukido awakens to discover that Yakumo's body is leaking Arbitrium. In a dramatic move, he removes Fist from his own body and attaches him to Yakumo, urging him to remember the promise they had made. Cutting back to the present, Hikaru tells Alma that they must save Jun immediately, and together they charge into battle, triggering a massive explosion. Fist, however, intercepts their attack by summoning an enormous structure known as the Arbitrium Amplifier. With cold determination, he declares that he will use this power to conquer the world, making humans his slaves. Hikaru lunges to stop him, but Fist skillfully parries the attack and retaliates with a powerful laser beam. Hikaru then recovers swiftly and launches a counterattack from behind, smashing him down to the ocean floor. Not to be outdone, Fist then summons an enormous crystal that propels him back to the surface, realizing in that moment just how resilient he is. Hikaru charges in again, and as Jun regains control of his body, they manage to land a hit on Fist. But when Hikaru attempts to reason with him, Fist shoves him away with a brutal punch, coldly declaring that the body now belongs to him and no one else. Alma asks why Fist is so intent on enslaving humans, and Fist coldly reveals the truth behind the tragedy, so he says that it wasn't a mere accident. He confesses that after Tsukido and Nikumo were killed, he overheard their relatives discussing Ordella, who had tampered with the experiment to trigger the meltdown. Shocked and disbelieving, Alma struggles to accept this revelation while Fist insists that humans deserve to be hated because they were responsible for the deaths of Tsukido and Yakumo. Hikaru admits that humans are indeed flawed, but he argues that they have the capacity to keep moving forward, urging Fist to let go of the past. However, Fist grows enraged, declaring that humans will never stop harming one another, so it's better to make them his slaves. He then challenges Alma, asking if she still wishes to help the humans, and blasts Alma with an energy beam. When the attack fails, Alma chooses to side with the humans, stating that neither Yakumo nor Tsukido would have supported Fist's twisted vision. Their powers clash fiercely, and Hikaru soon realizes that he's on the verge of defeat. Just then, Jun regains control of his body and shouts at Hikaru to stop holding back, insisting he wants him to win. Spurred by this, Hikaru and Alma decide to go all out, leaving Fist struggling to keep pace. In a desperate bid, Fist fires his beam cannon, but the combined force of Hikaru and Alma's counterattack is too much, so Fist is sent crashing to the ground. As he lies there battered, he laments that Tsukido was a good man who did not deserve to die, and he blames humans for his loss, questioning Alma on why she fights to protect them. Hikaru in turn wonders aloud why Fist is so obsessed with controlling the human race, and then Alma comes to a painful realization. Fist is deeply conflicted because he loves Tsukido, yet he harbors a seething hatred for humans. In a final desperate moment, Fist unleashes his full power. Hikaru, determined to save him, meets Fist's onslaught head-on, and they exchange every bit of strength they have. The battle culminates in a massive explosion that completely destroys Fist's body. As the dust settles, Fist falls into a deep, regretful sleep, finally accepting that Tsukido would never have approved of the path he chose. A while later, we see Wanner and Keijimaru subduing a young man who turns out to be a member of a criminal organization. They soon discover that he's using a modified shackle to control a mecha Yude, and the boy arrogantly declares that only the strong deserve to survive. Enraged and happy, Wanner starts beating him up, boasting how much he relishes tormenting the weak, until Keijimaru steps in to ring him in. The boy then makes a feeble attempt to escape, but Tuz fires a shot at him, warning Wanner and Keijimaru to stop fooling around, while Set chimes in with an invitation to hit the karaoke bar with Tuz after the mission. Shortly thereafter, we see Kazuha and Adele in action as they capture a group of criminals. However, Adele grumbles that things would have gone much smoother if everyone had followed his plan. In that moment, Amada suddenly appears and beckons them to join him for a ride. Elsewhere, Kwon is with the others, quietly thinking about Aki and expressing his desire to see her before he departs for the Mecha Yude world. Tani then asks him if he can revive Carex, and Kwon explains that it's possible now that he's become the head of research for the Kagami group, crediting Adele for teaching him how to repair Mecha Yude cores. Meanwhile, Haki interrogates a captured criminal, questioning him about Amaryllis because the new shackles bear a striking resemblance to her. But before the conversation can deepen, Fubuki insists it's time to leave, and when the group finds they're unsure of how to return to the lab, Tudu steps in and leads them, revealing that he no longer works as Ohito's bodyguard. At the Kagami building, discussions arise about the newly formed criminal organization. Jun voices his opinion that they must be stopped, reminding everyone that they once used Mecha Yude as mere tools and accusing Fist and Amaryllis of manipulating events. Still, he acknowledges that they are partly to blame for allowing it to happen. This leads to the revelation that the company's new goal is to find a way for Mecha Yude and humans to coexist harmoniously. We then return to Kwon as he's about to leave for the Mecha Yude world. Just then, Aki arrives with the rest of the group and Kwon is overjoyed to see her. Soon after, Hikaru joins them and together they open a portal to the other world. As Alma realizes that it's time to say goodbye, Hikaru hands Kwon Fist's cue, urging him to take care while also letting Alma keep his jacket. Then everyone says goodbye.